pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll, Atlantic. Flight outside SC off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
All right, I'm going to assume that I'm being piped through right now. Folks, you know what time it is. Let us know. Do you see the beautiful view of Starship SN9 right now? And do you hear me? John Galloway with NASASpaceflight here, checking in as we spool up the live stream. We told you we've been watching what's happening out there at Boca Chica, and when we started to see activity at the tank farm for SN9's cryo test is what we think is going on. Proof testing. Let's say proof testing for now. We would spool up a stream and we would let y'all know. We don't want to clickbait you into thinking something's happening unless there's evidence that something's going on. And as you can see, lower left-hand corner of the screen, there is some venting from the tank farm today. So let me know if you can hear me just fine. 5x5 looks good. All right. And we're going to get this party started. A couple hours left in the test window here, about 3 hours last I checked. Somebody in the back room will correct me if that's wrong. But
the window closes at 5 p.m. today.
At 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Okay, and we'll start the introductions that way. That was Michael Baylor checking in. How you doing today, Michael?
I'm doing well, and hopefully they will get that cryogenic proof test done today. We think they did an ambient proof test yesterday, and they didn't quite have time for the cryogenic proof test. So the cryogenic proof test is the last test they need to do before they move on to the Raptor engine testing.
All right, 5 p.m. So we got just over 3 hours coming up. And then also joining us, I think we've got Jack. Jack, are you on comms right now?
I'm on comms right now. What's up, everybody? How's it going?
Dude, it sounds like you're on a tarmac. There's like a jet engine going in the background. What are you doing today?
Yeah, sorry about that. A little bit of cleaning going on around our house. It should be over shortly, and I will mute myself vigilantly.
That's less exciting. I was trying to let you say like, oh yeah, I'm here on this tarmac at Mojave or whatever. I don't know, but it's just a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, I mean, I now regret not saying I was somewhere cool, but hey, next time. Thanks for teeing me up on that, even though I whiffed.
I tried, Jack. I tried. We'll get you next time. Folks, Jack and Michael will be hanging out here with you today. Also, we may get Thomas coming through. Did Thomas ever show up? Yeah. Good timing. Welcome, Thomas Berghart, to the live commentary over here as well. So, y'all, it looks like we're technically good. We've got 2 cameras online here. This one is the robot that's been out there in stakeout mode at Boca Chica. And then we've also working on spooling up Mary's as well, troubleshooting an issue with a modem there right now. But we do have 2 cameras out there today so that we can bring you this live coverage of what's going on with SN9. Again, some activity from the tank farm has spurred us to start the live stream here. But Thomas, Jack, Michael, I'll let y'all take it away, and I'll just be monitoring for anything I can help with technically.
Yeah.
Thanks, dude. Cryo proof. We're looking for a cryo proof. We think yesterday they did an ambient proof.
Just take it from the top, Thomas.
I mean, it's a giant steel balloon, right? I mean, it's not made of flimsy material like latex or rubber or anything or mylar. It's made of steel, but it's still a pressure vessel, and so they need to make sure that that pressure vessel is, all of the welds and all of the rings and all of the points in each and every bulkhead where some piping or some wiring or something comes through and potentially causes a issue with integrity of the seals there. All of that stuff, you want to make sure it doesn't pop before you put propellant in it, right? Because propellant is much nastier than liquid nitrogen. So first you test it with liquid nitrogen, which is a similar temperature, right, as the propellants. And that allows you to make sure that the pressure vessel that is both tanks of the ship and both header tanks are in fact sound. And then at that point, SpaceX will feel confident enough, presumably, to put actual propellant, methane and liquid oxygen in this vehicle. But until then, we need to test it first with liquid nitrogen. And it should be noted, we don't know if this is going to be a a normal thing for starships, or if this is just a thing right now for early starships. They could easily get to a point where, well, I shouldn't say easily. They could potentially get to a point where they do not need to cryo-proof or ambient-proof these vehicles. Although I am not a rocket designer, maybe that will always be, one of the steps. But that's what we're seeing right now.
And really quick, I think you guys might be able to hear me now. Turns out my
Yes,
audio was actually muted.
We'll reintroduce Thomas. Welcome to
What's
the
up,
stream, Thomas.
everybody? Thomas Burkhart, editor and reporter for NASASpaceflight, and now you should be able to hear my voice, even though I've been talking for a little bit. Sorry about that, everybody. But Jack just gave me the overview that I was looking for, so all good.
Yeah, luckily through context clues, people could probably figure out that you asked me what's going on and why do they need to do it.
Yeah.
That's what that little explainer was.
What happens when the cryogenic proof test has been scheduled for the last, well, it's like 12 hours yesterday, and then
Right, yeah.
it's been another 4 hours today, as we don't have time to like sit down and prepare, because we can't be like on standby for 18 hours in total. So we just find out it's happening, everybody races together, we don't have time to test everything in advance. So sorry about that issue, but it should be fixed.
But yeah, so right now, so like Jack said, cryogenic testing today, and what we're gonna see here is hopefully Starship SN9 get frosty, right? We'll see the outside of it kind of become colder due to the cryogenic temperature nitrogen going in, which will give us a sign that testing is actually underway. And it's kind of why we didn't do a live stream for ambient temperature testing yesterday, right? Because you can't actually see anything happening.
Nope, it would have looked like a Starship is sitting on the pad for
Right.
6 hours with nothing
Right, yeah.
happening. Then you see like a tiny bit of venting at the end as they release all the pressure, but
Right.
this is a much more visually impressive test. You can see lots of tank farm venting right now,
Right.
and as they start to load nitrogen into Starship, then you'll be able to see that frost line going up. And we will have a tighter. We do have Mary's tighter camera. We're just working on one issue with her modems right now, and then we'll get a tighter view. But again, as I was saying a minute ago, this test, we had no idea when it was going to happen. So we are spooling up everything as fast as we can for you.
Yeah, basically Michael just sends a message to the Discord, hey, the tank farm activity's happening, we need to get set up, and everyone scrambles into a Discord call, so... But it worked, and now we're here and ready to answer some questions and stuff. I should pull up the queue so I can handle that end of it as well. So if you have any questions about what we're talking about or what we're seeing, please feel free to put them into chat. And tag us with @NASASpaceflight. That'll help us get it into our queue so we can see it on our end, and we can happily discuss or answer questions and stuff like that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing
go
the panel up there, Thomas, because a little bit of inside baseball, my heater is broken. And so my cat
Oh,
has
no.
decided to take up residence on my lap. So it's a little bit hard to
Oh.
have my computer open right now. Although I bet if I open the computer, she will move over there because, cats. But yeah, pop that panel open and fire away if you get any cool questions. What do you got? Let's answer them.
Yeah, let's see what we've got here. We've got a couple super chats right off the bat. Multi-Space Industries, a regular. Both my favorite today. Does that mean it's Thomaszilla fan club? Thanks, MSI. Appreciate it. David with a super chat question. Thank you so much for your support. A few weeks ago, SN9 fell in the high bay. A friend of mine was concerned that forces exerted on it and microfractures could cause a failure. Is that possible? So, yeah, obviously there was a bunch of concerns due to whatever ended up being the root cause. We know the support underneath Starship SN9 that was supporting it in the high bay collapsed from something. We don't know like the root cause or anything, but it did tip over in the high bay, and we saw that the fins were damaged. We know they've been replaced, but SpaceX would have definitely gone through a lot of inspections to make sure to see what exactly the damage was. It only tipped a little bit, so I wouldn't be too concerned about like microfractures and things like that. SpaceX has ways to inspect the vehicle and see just how much damage there really is. And I think it is safe to say that SpaceX has completed those investigations. And even though Starship SN10 is right around the corner getting stacked right now, and there clearly wouldn't have been a huge delay if they had to wait for SN10. I think since they rolled out SN9, they're still confident that SN9 is suitable for flight, and they wouldn't have done so if they didn't. So I wouldn't be too worried about damage from that, as it appears that SpaceX is still confident they can fly SN9. Good question. And looks like we've got Mary's feed online now.
Yeah, look at that. Excellent. Thanks for spooling that up, Mary.
Yeah, I like this because we have two different vantage points. You got the wide-angle overall view of the launch site from the bot on the right, and then we got the tight super zoom on Mary's super powerful camera. That'll give us a good view of that frost line as it builds up.
Nice.
As always, a huge
the
thank you to Mary. Yeah.
the SN9 drama really. I don't know if anyone here is a Simpsons fan, but there's an episode where Homer like spends a whole bunch of time making a whole pig like as barbecue, and it gets like launched through the air because it's a cartoon, and the whole time in the like sequence of events that you see it flying through the air, Homer's just like, it's just a little airborne, it's still good, and then it like falls into a swamp, and he's like, it's just a little wet, it's still good, and it continues like that for like a minute or so, but I feel the same way about SN9. It's like it just tipped over a little, it's still good,
I'm gonna keep going with some super chat questions and things like that. Hartley with a super chat. Thank you so much for your support. May Starship Tipsy have a successful cryo test today. Tommy with the new membership. Thank you so much. And a super chat here from Don. Hi from Switzerland and from Ruag-Space. So Ruag-Space, of course, involved in producing lots of fairings and things like that. I know they work with ULA on their stuff and a couple other projects. So shout out to Switzerland. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right, so going into some regular questions, we've got one here from Mark who asks, could we still get a flight before 2021? So Starship SN9 lifting off before the end of the year, only a couple days left. Jack, what do you
Nope.
think? That's short and to the point, but I think I agree though. I think we're expecting early January for SN9's 2021 flight.
A New Year's
Yeah.
Eve flight would be super cool, though. That's one heck of a firework.
But there are you have to get this cryo test done, plus we're expecting a static fire test prior to flight. So in order to get both of those done and then fly before 2021, I think is asking too much.
Yeah, and it's not just the two tests. I mean, that's the two tests that we have visibility into. But
Right.
who knows what other items are outstanding for this vehicle that need to be done before it flies, and also who knows how long that data review will take after they do the cryoproof and after they do the static fire. And
Right.
that data review could pop up any items that, the static fire didn't go great for X or Y reason, let's swap out one or more Raptors. I mean, that's exactly what we saw with serial number 8. So swapping out of a Raptor could delay things further. I mean, delay isn't really the right word, I don't think, though, because I mean, we all know roughly what's going on based on road closures and things like that, but I mean, it's really not. I struggle to use the word delay in this context because it'll go when it's ready, and it's a test campaign. It's a developmental test campaign. So
Right.
there's
The
so
tests
many.
aren't really scheduled per se.
Yeah, I mean, they are for SpaceX's internal purposes, but beyond that, it's not like they have an operational mission with a customer
Right.
that's paying and expecting their payload to enter orbit and come online with antennas, extended at a certain date and time. So it's important to note, as always, with Starship activities, that this is a test program, and that is why that's why we like watching it so much. I mean, you never know what's going to happen next.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting though because had they not tipped over Starship SN9, I think we would have seen another flight in 2020. So they are capable of going really quickly and really ramping up the flight cadence. And I think we're going to see that as they move on to SN10 and 11 after SN9 flies. And I mean, another interesting point is if SN9 were to land successfully, will they fly SN9 again? And if they start reflying these, that could further increase the flight rate. So I think a world where we see multiple Starship flights in a single month is not far away.
More questions here that I'm going to keep going through. Question here from John. Did they end up swapping out an aft flap or just a nose cone flap? What exactly did they replace after SN9 tipped and they got a vertical? Jack?
Both flaps on that side of the vehicle,
Right, so an aft flap and a
aft
nose
and
cone flap,
forward.
but only one of each, right?
Correct. That's my understanding. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
And again, I don't I mean, obviously, we don't know exactly what other work they could have put into the vehicle after that. Obviously, there were inspections of other parts, but we don't know if they had to replace any other smaller hardware that would be less noticeable. Obviously, the fins are pretty noticeable when they replace those. Um, but that's what we saw, and hopefully that was kind of the only thing that got damaged. And luckily, I mean, if it had tipped, another direction where there weren't fins in the way to kind of stop it from falling, it could have damaged some more hard parts of the vehicle that might have been harder to repair versus literally just uninstalling and putting on a new flap.
Yeah,
So,
it'd be really awful if like the nose cone or something got irreparably damaged. That would be really unfortunate. So
right.
Robert Hobson, thank you for the $50 towards a sweater for Jack's chili cat. Jack, are you going to
that's
buy a
a
sweater for your chili cat now?
that's an expensive sweater. Thank you, Bob Hob. Um, I mean, I don't know that she would put up with that. We can try it. We can absolutely try it, but
How
I
about a
feel like
live stream?
it
Members
would
only live stream of Jack's cat trying on a sweater.
there we go. I feel like I would just end up bloody and clawed by my angry cat, but who knows? She's she gets super cuddly in the winter. It's like the best thing ever. So maybe she'd like it. I don't know. Thanks, Bob Hob.
And there's a bingo for everyone keeping track. Rough Riders, $5. Do you know the booster flying Transporter 1? Thanks, guys. Merry Christmas. No, I don't think I've seen confirmation of that booster yet. I'm trying to think. I mean,
Yeah, a
I
really
can.
quick check of the website known as nextspaceflight.com. I think we might know who runs that. Says we don't really know what the booster is yet, and it usually shows up there once we figured it out. So I don't think we know yet.
Yeah, I was trying to remember. If I've not entered it on my website yet, then we don't know. But I mean, I'm looking at the boosters that they have available right now, and I think if I had to guess, I would place my money on B1058. But I don't know for sure yet. I don't like to put things on the website until we know for sure. I like to make sure that whenever I put a booster there, it's going to be the booster.
Right.
Sometimes it's pretty obvious. It's by process of elimination. I think B1058 is probably the booster based on process of elimination. But I mean, you never know for sure because January 14th is the current launch date that we've heard, but that launch date is one we've been hearing for a while now. So
Right.
it could be that the actual launch date could end up being 2 weeks later. And in that case, there are other boosters that could be refurbished by then. So it's hard. I don't like to make a booster call until it's like a week or two before, in most cases.
Here is a good question here, a super chat question from Michael Rodriguez. Do they do ambient and pressure tests on all the Falcon 9 rockets like we're seeing with Starship? So we know after they're built in Hawthorne, they originally go to McGregor, Texas for testing. We know that involves a static fire test at some point, but do we have any insight into what else they might do with those boosters, including do they pressurize them and do those kind of tests? Michael, do you know?
That's. I mean, I don't think they do a cryo-proof test, in what I understand. I mean, I think they just do a static fire, and they've built so many Falcon 9s, they have a pretty good understanding of how they work. I'm
And
not
the
sure
static
if
fire
they.
kind of rolls the other tests into it
Yeah,
because you have to fuel the vehicle and pressurize it and all that stuff. So you kind of do all the steps before actually lighting the engines anyway, right?
yeah, but in terms of if they do an ambient test, I'm not sure.
I don't think we've ever heard of that being
Yeah,
done on a
that's a
Falcon
good
9
question.
booster of any kind. Keep in mind that what they're doing with Starship now, short of the ambient test, because the ambient test doesn't really happen during a normal countdown, but during a normal fuel and flight of a Starship vehicle, you fill the vehicle with cryogenic temperature propellants and then light the engines. So you kind of do the cryogenic test in during the countdown towards either a static fire or towards a launch. Of course, right now they're doing it with nitrogen, which is inert. So if something does go wrong, you don't have an explosion. You just have a pressure burst with a lot of cold nitrogen everywhere. Nitrogen's pretty harmless. So there's risk reduction there because it's such a developmental vehicle and things like that. But same thing for Falcon 9. When you fuel the Falcon 9 and pressurize it for flight right before engine ignition, when you do that static fire test, you're still testing no leaks on the vehicle. Can it handle the temperatures correctly? Can it pressurize properly? All of that has to happen before you light the engines. So It's a matter of doing them in a bunch of different separate tests or doing it in one static fire test, which includes fueling and all that. So they do test those aspects, but I think it's a good question. I don't know if they do separate tests, especially like that ambient test or anything like that.
And I think the point of the ambient test is really just this, it's just a quick way to leak check. I think they just
Right,
pressurize Starship to a certain pressure. They let it sit for 5 hours or so, and they see, does it maintain that pressure? And if not, then there's a leak.
right.
So Falcon 9's build quality is probably a lot
Better
higher
than
since
Starship
it's
these
since
days.
it's
Yeah,
better than a Starship since it's an operational orbital human-rated launch vehicle. So
right.
I'm not sure if they even have to do that, but that's a
Correct.
good question. And
Here is. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say quickly, by the way, we do not expect them to continue doing cryogenic proof tests forever on Starship. At some point, we think they
Right,
will move to more like do a Falcon 9, where it just goes straight into static fire testing.
right.
I'm trying to see if I can see any venting or signs of condensation on Starship yet. It's hard to tell, especially with all this heat distortion today.
Right. We'll keep an eye on that, and I will keep going through questions until then. We've got one here from Boris who asks, "Why is Bluezilla, the crane, if those are not familiar with the name, why is it so close to SN9? Could it be damaged in a RUD case, a rapid unscheduled disassembly, if you will?" This is
Small
different
small
because they
correction,
go
small
ahead.
correction. Just because I'm a stickler for stupid names, Bluezilla was the crane that erected the high bay. This is Tankzilla. I know,
Ah,
very distinct names. Sorry, but yeah, small correction.
yeah. So they left this crane at the launch site. We know during SN8 testing the crane wasn't there anymore, right? This is different.
Well, I don't remember if they tested SN8 during the cryogenic proof test with the crane nearby. They moved it before the flight, but I think they did some testing. They may have done some testing with SN8 while the crane was at the pad. I might be mistaken, but in any event, the cryogenic proof test uses liquid nitrogen in
Hmm.
most cases, unless they wanted. I think there's been maybe one cryogenic proof test where they used some liquid oxygen because they wanted to do some testing with liquid oxygen. But in most cases, they use liquid nitrogen because it's inert. So if if there was to be a rapid and planned disassembly, there would be no fireball. So
Right.
the odds of the crane getting damaged are pretty slim, and also the crane looks like it's super close on our camera. Actually, the crane is quite a bit further away. I believe they put it on the landing pad or near the landing pad. I could be mistaken, but there's a couple 100 feet separating that crane and the pad right now. It's just the perspective of Mary's camera makes them look closer together than they actually are. But I do think they will move the crane back to the launch. They will move the crane back to the production area most likely before the flight test. At least
Right.
that's what I did with SN8.
I mean, at some point, I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure around there, and again, like we saw with SN8, the liftoff is probably not the highest risk part of the flight. SN8 lifted off with no problems, and they have confidence in lifting off Starship vehicles, I think, at least more than the other parts of the flight. So I'm not sure it would be ridiculous to just leave the crane there so it's ready to stack SN10 after SN9 flies. Um, but if it's anything like SN8, they'll clear the crane out ahead of flight, so they could go either way with it.
Yeah.
At some point, you're going to need to be confident enough to fly vehicles with, all that infrastructure right next to it, because that's how an operational launch pad will work. But obviously, this is still a test program. So
Yeah.
here is a good question from Hightower. Are we expecting two static fire tests, one with the main tanks, one from the header tanks? I think only one. Of course, SpaceX doesn't really publish their testing program, but I think we just put out an article on NASASpaceflight.com about what we're kind of looking forward to within the next couple weeks, and I think they're gonna do a reduced testing schedule compared to like SNA. SNA did so many different tests and static fire tests and all of those. SN9 should be more streamlined now that they have all of that data. I would expect probably just the one 3-engine static fire test. Obviously, if they get any data during cryo testing or that static fire test where they need to do additional testing, they will. But if everything goes well, I think only one static fire test is what they'll need before they fly SN9.
Yeah. And it's hard to say because the plan could be one static fire now, and then Chris Bergen writes his article saying that, and then they end up doing two static fires. And
Right.
because SpaceX is not putting out official press releases, it's hard to say, was a second static fire because of a problem that occurred during the first static fire, or did they just, change their mind and decide that they wanted to do another static fire to reduce some risk based on the results they saw during SN8's test flight. Plans change in Boca Chica every single day. So just because we're saying, or Chris Bergen wrote in his article that he thinks it's going to be one static fire, does not mean it's actually definitively going to be one static fire. The plans could change tomorrow, they could change today, but the current plan that Chris Bergen, I guess, understands is one static fire.
Yeah. We got a super chat here from CAP Railroad, a regular on the streams. Thanks for joining in. Hope you all had a good Christmas. Question is SN9 made of the new stainless steel material, and have we tested 1 to 8 bar? So Starship 9 is the first vehicle to be completely made of the new 304L stainless steel, right? Did I get that right?
Sorry, say that again. I was reading something else.
Yeah,
You're
I think
okay.
you got it right, but say it again.
Yeah.
Let me verify.
Starship SN9, first one to be completely made of the new 304L alloy, right?
Yeah, I think
Correct.
Elon tweeted that. Correct.
Right.
Yep.
So that is the main difference between SN8 and SN9. SN8 had some parts with the old alloy in it, excuse me, and SN9 now is up to the newest alloy completely. But that's kind of only the only major change I think we're aware of for SN9, other than
Yeah.
it was also assembled more completely before being rolled out versus being finished assembly at the launch site.
Yeah, Elon tweeted it was only minor upgrades.
Right. And of course, they also made the minor changes to address the header tank issue from the SN8 test flight. So that was the other thing they changed.
Yeah, we don't know if I don't think we've seen confirmation if those are hardware changes or just procedural changes in terms of the
Hmm,
order of how they open valves or the timing of opening valves or something along those lines. So I'm
sure.
not sure if they actually made physical hardware changes because I don't think we saw them at the production site open up that area again. So I'm not sure if they actually, changed hardware, if they just are going to change the procedures on flight day.
It's a good point. And then the second part of this question about testing to 8 bar being that pressure mark that they want to reach. That's the safety margin they want to reach. What's the pressure they've been testing to recently? I know Elon usually tries to give some info about what kind of pressure milestones they're reaching in their test. Do we know if they've reached the spot where they need to? I forget.
I think with SN7 or SN7.1, both of those did, I think. Those are the most recent test articles they prove tested to failure.
Right.
I don't think they've actually been testing these starships, like the full prototypes to that high of a pressure, although I could be wrong. And we do see some venting right now, actually, from the aft section of Starship, so I will
Do
update
we?
our timeline. There's a little bit of vapors coming off. So,
All right, cool.
so, but as I was saying, I don't the 8.5 bar is the target that they want to hit for a 1.5 factor of safety for human spaceflight. But
Hmm.
to do a normal flight test, they do not need that much pressure. So I'm not sure if they're actually going for that pressure on these proof tests, or if they're just going for the pressure that they need to hit for a flight, which is about 6 or 7 bar. So, you know, I don't think we've seen official confirmation from Elon, but if I had to guess, it's probably somewhere below 8 bar.
All right, thank you. And continuing on with some questions, we got one about SN8. Is the remains of Starship SN8 still on the landing pad? We can see the nose cone behind SN9, right?
Yep. So if you look just to the left of SN9, you can see a much smaller nose cone, and that is the remnants of Starship SN8. For some reason, taken, they've not cleared that landing pad yet. I presume that will happen in the near future, given that SN9 is going to be flying soon. But as of now, the nose cone for Starship SN8 remains on the launch pad, or the landing pad, excuse me.
It is cool seeing it kind of peek out from the side there, like, hey.
It's just a reminder that SN9 needs to do better, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've got like Starhopper over to the left. Like, look at SN8. You can't do that. You gotta maintain your pressure on the landing burn. You gotta. It's like Starhopper like pointing to the stereotypical like sports blackboard with like the circles and X's and a whole bunch of arrows. When you flip, you gotta burn. You can't flip and not burn.
More questions here about some operational Starship questions. What will Starship's payload capacity be for a Mars mission? So this is an interesting thing, and it's different than most launch vehicles because the entire Starship architecture is centered around the fact that it will refuel in orbit after launching from Earth initially. So the max payload to anywhere is kind of just the payload you can get to low Earth orbit because once you get there, you can refuel your tanks and you've got a fully fueled Starship in low Earth orbit with whatever payload you got there. I think the number was about 100 tons to low Earth orbit. And again, that's a very ballpark number because Starship is still undergoing testing, still undergoing development. The exact number will come at a later date, but about 100 tons or more to low Earth orbit. And that's, Starship and Super Heavy getting the Starship vehicle into orbit with no propellant left. Then you launch tanker starships to refuel the starship with the payload on it, and then that vehicle can go anywhere in the solar system. So the payload to a Mars mission is probably about 100 tons, just because a fully fueled starship in low Earth orbit is probably enough fuel to get that 100-ton payload from low Earth orbit to the surface of Mars. You need to do the transfer burn to get to Mars's orbit, and then the landing on Mars. So that's the ballpark number, and that's a weird thing because most rockets, the payload to any destination changes based on what the destination is. But in reality, Starship is just kind of 100 tons to everywhere. It just matters how many refueling trips you need to do when you're in Earth orbit is kind of the only difference.
100 tons to anywhere has a nice ring to it, like a
Right.
really nice ring to it. And yeah, it's important also to note as part of that, that's why methalox as the fuel for Starship and for Raptor is so important. At least one of the reasons.
Yes.
You can make methane and you can make oxygen basically anywhere there's water. So the fact that they can take that 100 tons to Mars is really huge. But also they can then fuel that Starship up, launch from Mars, and come back. So
Right.
that's amazing. You don't have to send your return fuel with Starship because then at that point the vehicle would have to be so massive and the fuel tanks would have to be so large. I mean, I don't even know if that's practical. I mean, there's a reason it hasn't happened yet, right?
Right. Although for shorter missions, I know Elon has mentioned that for missions to the moon, including with their proposal for the Artemis program to be NASA's moon lander, they want to get Starship from low Earth orbit to the lunar surface and back to Earth orbit for refueling without refueling on the lunar surface. Obviously, if they are able to refuel on the lunar surface down the line, that will increase how much payload they can bring down and back. But I think initially, with the amount of cargo that they need to transport initially, they actually want to do that whole trip without refueling on the lunar surface. I don't know if that's as doable on Mars. Maybe the Mars transfer burn takes a lot more energy than going to the moon, but I don't know. That'll be interesting to see how that works out. Here we got a super chat question from Herman. Thank you so much. Is Tank still the launch site to move the remains of SN8? Well, that crane can't reach SN8's remains from where it is, right? Because SN8 is mostly by the landing pad, which is it's close, but not right next to the launch site. It's a little bit away, right?
Correct.
So I don't think that crane's going to be used for SN8 cleanup. I think it's there. It was there to obviously to help put SN9 on the stand. And then I think it's there for either future stacking operations or they just haven't moved it out of the way yet.
Yeah, I mean, if something goes wrong and they need to take SN9 back to the build site,
Right.
and they don't really want to move the crane away just yet, but yeah, I mean, definitely, I think Tankzilla has stayed at the launch site for previous static fires for SN8, but before flight they moved it back. I think that's correct. I'm not 100% positive though.
Gotcha.
Look at the lifting squid, the straps on the crane there. You can see them blowing in the wind. It's pretty windy out there today.
Mary sent us a message earlier that said it was a little bit windy out there today. I mean, kind of see the heat distortion not helping either, but uh, still a great view.
Yeah. You can see that. I think we do see frost building though on the aft section
Just
of
a
that
little bit. You
liquid
see that
oxygen
like
tank.
one thin ring, right?
Yep. So I think we can progress our timeline to frost increasing. So we'll see that frost line slowly rise up the side of Starship SN9 as they continue to load liquid nitrogen into Starship. And then we'll also see that upper methane tank start to get frosty. The methane tank is, if you look really closely, you can see that pipe or those pipes, kind of a raceway going up the side of SN9, and they stop. And just around that area is the top of the methane tank. And then above that is the nose cone area, which is mostly empty. So the tank section sort of stops about half of the way up the side of Starship SN9.
More questions. I'm going to keep them coming here. A super chat question here. If the super heavy slash booster number one, 150-meter hop, and other hops are successful, do you think that super heavy booster number two will go orbital? Thanks for great coverage. So I will open this up to the rest of the team for some speculation. How many super heavy prototypes before the first one to attempt an orbital launch? Jack, you go first.
I think if the first one lives, it might well become the first Starship prototype to fly more than once. Well, sorry, I take that back. Starhopper flew technically like a few centimeters, and then 20 meters, and then 150 meters. But you know what I mean.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if they build one super heavy prototype, take their time with the next one, and start using that super heavy prototype operationally, or for more testing than just a hop for itself, right? But that's just me completely speculating.
But
Michael,
I
any
mean,
thoughts?
Elon said the next super heavy, or the first super heavy prototype, is a few months away. So I agree with Jack. It would make sense to fly that multiple times. But my question for Jack is: do you think a normal Starship prototype will not fly more than once within the next few months?
Oh, I mean, that's a very good point. I mean, I guess based on what I said, that would imply that's what I thought. But, um, I don't know. It's hard to say. I do think SN9 will stick the landing. I'll go public with that guess of mine or prediction, whatever you want to call it. So if SN9 does successfully land, maybe they would fly 9 again. But there was a time where we thought they were going to fly 5 and 6, kind of leapfrogging each other. Um, Not in real life, but in schedule terms. um, and yeah, but that didn't ever pan out. Partly because their designs had progressed, and partly, we're not quite sure exactly why. But um, no, that's a good question, Michael. I could see them using 9, 10, 11, 12, any number of any one of those current in production starships to fly more than once.
Yeah. But
It's a very
anyway,
good question, and good
sorry for
point.
the
I
tangent.
hadn't thought of that.
The
As
only
the actual question, I think I don't know if it'll be like BN2 or BN3, but I think you're right. There will be a much lower booster number that performs the orbital flight as opposed to Starship. It'll probably be like Starship SN. I'm just throwing a number out there, maybe like SN16 and
Yeah,
BN3 or 4. So
I was
the
going to say
booster
18.
number,
So nice.
yeah. So the booster number will be a lot smaller than the Starship number, I think.
It's interesting because we know that Elon has said there's going to be some more significant changes to Starship, starting with was it SN15 or SN16? Anybody?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
I remember. I mean, it's not S. I know SN9 and up through either 15 or 16 are lacking some significant like design changes that are coming down the road. I wonder if they want to wait for those to try to go to orbit and do. I mean, they can go to
15.
higher
Yeah, it's
altitudes.
SN15.
15.
Thank you, chat.
Okay, so I wouldn't be surprised if SN15 or shortly after that, so 16s or 18, high teens will be the first one to Starship vehicle to try and go orbital. And it'll be interesting because all of the Starship development also feeds into Super Heavy development because they're very similar build wise and things like that. A big limiting factor for when they can do an orbital flight will be when they have enough Raptors to prep power a Super Heavy booster for orbital flight. Obviously, the initial flight, Elon said, only needs 2 Raptors, but to go orbital, you need 20 plus Raptors at least on just the booster alone. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. don't think it'll be an issue. We know SpaceX is very far along as far as Raptor production goes, but that's still a lot of engines, and it'll be interesting to see which Super Heavy booster does do that. But I think I agree with Michael and Jack that it'll be a much lower number than the Starship serial number. And a super chat question here from Neil. Again, we're talking about Tankzilla, the crane that is still at the pad. Is it there to place SN10 on the second pad? Maybe, but I wouldn't expect that to occur before SN9 flies, I don't think. I know Elon has said two starships on pads A and B at the same time could be a thing. Um, SN10 is still being stacked, and I'm not sure they want to risk any effects of a anomaly with one vehicle to impact the other. Doesn't mean they couldn't do it, but I think it's more likely that they'll move the crane out of the way once SN9 gets through its pre-flight testing.
I know a lot of people are worried about or have questions about, how do they have a Starship on Pad B and launch one from Pad A? Isn't that dangerous for the Starship that's not launching? And I think in some ways, yes. But I also think, I mean, if you look at the SN8 explosion from when it had its hard landing, I'm not a rocket scientist, but it looked like, a relatively small explosion. It was a large explosion because we don't see explosions like that very often. But in terms of the amount of fuel for
Right.
such an event, it had already burnt everything except for the last little
Exactly.
scraps of fuel. So while it was an explosion and while it was energetic, I do wonder exactly how energetic it was. Gene from Space Padre Isle and I and some others, I think Mary came out too. Yeah, Mary came out too. We went out right as the road opened, as SN8 was still in pieces on the landing pad, and Starhopper looked fine, Pad A looked fine, everything the tank farm looked fine. That could just be luck. It could also be that the explosion was just not very high energy. So at least on landing, if there's a Starship on one of the pads and a Starship has launched successfully, not created any debris that's a concern for the non-launching ship, and if it lands and it has a hard landing like SEAL number 8, my gut, and this is my gut, I'm not a rocket scientist, my gut says that that's not very dangerous. You obviously wouldn't want to be there, but it's not like having an entirely fully fueled Starship detonate on the landing pad with a perfect mixture of its two propellants. It's sort of like a spectrum, right? That a detonation with perfect mixture of propellants is on one side, think SN4, and a conflagration or just the last little dregs of fuel being burnt as the thing has a hard landing, that's sort of the other end of the spectrum. So I don't know if that helps you to sort of calibrate your expectations of what kind of damage to expect at the landing site or launch pad or to another Starship that happens to be on the pad. But that was my thinking anyways.
Yeah.
I think I agree. More questions here. Here is a good one talking about the two different pads. Thunderbird asks, could Super Heavy go to Pad A? The SpaceX is building a third launch pad in Boca Chica at the orbital launch site that is intended for things such as Super Heavy. I think we will expect, even though it's only going to have two Raptors, I think we're expecting the first Super Heavy prototype to do its hop from the orbital launch mount. Is that correct, or is there a chance?
I don't know. I don't think we have I don't think we know yet, but my
Right.
inkling would be Pad A or Pad B because it's only
Yeah.
two Raptors. It is, they already launched with Starship SN8 with three Raptors, so a two Raptor launch off of Pad A or Pad B should be feasible. But yeah, it's hard to say. The other thing that makes me think Pad A or Pad B for the first booster is um, the orbital pad is just so far from complete. It's right now just concrete legs sticking out of the ground, right? Like they've been doing some infrastructure work around it, probably tank farm work, probably some piping and conduits and all kinds of stuff like that. Maybe culverts we've seen delivered, but yeah, something tells me that we're, I don't know, like 6 months away from orbital pad being complete. Maybe more, maybe less. I don't know, but certainly I think the first booster will be ready before the orbital pad is complete. But I'm not SpaceX. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think it's a super heavy on Pad A with only two engines and not much propellant in it is more than possible.
definitely possible. I'm thinking about not just engine thrust, because obviously the suborbital pads can handle 3 Raptors, as we saw with SN8, so the thrust levels aren't really a concern. But Super Heavy is also much taller and potentially a heavier dry mass, so maybe the stand might not be ready to support that. Is Super Heavy's dry mass more or less than Starship's dry mass? Do we even know that? I'm
I
going to
don't
go to SpaceX's website
know.
and find out.
Well, with 28 engines, it's much more, but with only 2
Right.
engines,
Oh, that's true.
it's probably about the same. Maybe
See,
I
Starship's
mean, it's
dry
slightly
mass.
taller, so maybe it's so I mean, it's I shouldn't say slightly taller, it is quite a bit taller, so that would increase the dry mass a bit, but I don't know if it would be enough with very little propellant to be something that could not be supported on the stand.
They only have the propellant masses on the website, so I don't have the dry masses in front of me. But it's yeah. So yeah, I don't think I would rule out Super Heavy going to Pad A or Pad B instead. That's a very good point. Um, and it's also Jack's good point of the orbital launch mount might not actually be ready in a couple months to support that first top test. So good point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a construction expert. I don't know how long concrete takes to cure, especially any sort of special variant of concrete they might be using, either for the marine environment or for the rocket blast impingement environment. Although it isn't, they are encased. The concrete is encased in those steel columns, so hard to say. But um, yeah, I mean, I would like to see the orbital mount finished sooner rather than later, and I would like to see a super heavy booster on it sooner rather than later. But we'll just have to wait and see how all of that plays out.
Going to some more questions here. One, how will they move the full 125-meter Starship and booster stack? How will they move that? Can Tankzilla move that thing? So they wouldn't roll them out both together at once, right? They would roll out the Super Heavy booster from the production site, put that onto the orbital launch mount, and then they would roll out whatever Starship they're going to mount on top and use a crane to mount that on top of the booster. So I think they can move the entire booster at once and lift that with sort of a Tankzilla type crane or something like that. Keep in mind that these boosters, and this is relatively speaking, these vehicles are not actually that heavy when there's no propellant in them. They're kind of just empty steel tubes, so they're not super heavy until they actually get filled with propellant.
Good one,
So
Thomas.
what's that?
Good one.
So yeah,
You didn't, you totally missed that, didn't you? Never
what?
mind.
No,
Let's see if chat picks that up. I bet chat picked that up.
what did I say?
You said they're not super heavy. Ha ha ha. I'm
Oh,
funny.
I didn't. Oh, that was so not intentional.
I missed it too. I was like, "What's going
I
on?"
was like, what is he talking about? I apologize for the bad pun. I didn't even mean it.
Yeah, chat got it. Of course they
Chat
did.
got Chat picks up on everything. You can't get anything past chat. But anyway, yeah, I don't think they'll move them out separately and then stack them one at a time, and I don't think they'll have any problems moving that with the way they've been transporting starships out and the Tankzilla type cranes and things like that.
Yeah, correct. And I believe that's even stated as so in the current Starship Payload user guide. It says that they'll wheel out the super heavy booster first, then stack the Starship on top of that. And granted, that Payload user guide is fairly old at this point. Elon, please, if you're listening, we would love another Starship update. I know you're busy, but yeah, it would be great. We know that a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago at this point, we saw on Twitter that Elon said he was going. They would be posting a Starship update sort of on the website this year. I don't know if that's in lieu of or in addition to or as well as a in-person sort of Starship update like they traditionally do. Obviously, that might be a little bit difficult given COVID and the pandemic right now. But yes, we need more updates on Starship. That would be really, really great, just so that the payload user guide and everything, all that good stuff can be updated and we can make sure that we have the most recent information. But it certainly seems like based on that payload user guide and just based on logistics, they would wheel the booster out, then stack Starship on the booster on the mount, and for Tankzilla specifically, this crane that we're looking at, they have additional sections of that boom, that big white boom right there, laying around at the gas well site that's right near the build site. So they have more parts of this crane. They can make it much, much, much bigger. I mean, in a previous live stream, we were looking at the PDF from Liebherr, the company that makes this crane, and this is not even its final form. I mean, this crane will go turbo, super saiyan, whatever. I haven't watched Dragon Ball Z in forever. Shut up. But yeah, it's more than capable, if I'm not mistaken. Which I always like to hedge, Thomas. I always like to hedge. I could be mistaken. But we do know that the Tankzilla could get much bigger, and we do know based on the payload user guide that they currently, anyways, as far as we know, are planning to roll out both halves of the vehicle separately and then stack them on the mount.
Jack, that's where you're supposed to hop in and say, "I'm not a craneologist or anything," but
I'm trying to phase out that joke because I keep saying scienceologist,
so
and everyone's like, "Whoa, did you just say Scientologist?" I'm like, "No, no, no, it's just a stupid dad joke. Ignore me,
say,
ignore me."
say I said I'm not a scienceologist. Geez, didn't you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just gotta roll with it. I've been here hanging out, listening in, monitoring technical things. Oh look, it's venting. Nice.
Oh, hey.
But I do wonder if we're going to see a construction for a permanent crane at the orbital launch site start soon.
That's another one of those things, Michael, where in that payload user guide, or maybe it was an FAA document, I forget,
In the
but
in the
they
most
straight up
recent
say,
FAA, you know, notification to the public that they're doing another environmental review and there's like an open period for the public to provide feedback. They say in that document there's going to be up to two launch stands, and there would be a vertical. I forget exactly what they called it. There'd be a vertical, integration tower building for each of those. So I think that does imply that they'll be building a permanent crane of some sort.
yeah,
At least the
I don't think that's a question, but what I do think is that they will use something like Tankzilla at least at first,
yes, I think that's fair.
because building any kind of massive several hundred, 300 whatever foot tall crane, is not going to be a small undertaking, especially on marshy, non-bedrock, sandy beach ground. I mean, I don't even want to think about that. Um, and just look at all of the work that they have done to get the orbital launch mount as far as they have. I mean, it's been, I mean, I want to say 9 months, 6 months, something like that. It's been a long time. And they started off with just bare ground and they dug super deep holes and they buried rebar and they poured concrete in those holes. So any kind of fixed crane, I mean, you're looking at like a year at least for that to happen. And they are absolutely and that's my guess. I could be wrong, but a year is absolutely too long. So while I think they're going to do that
For
without
orbit
question.
or
They're going to
for
build a fixed
launching super
crane.
heavy?
Say what?
For orbit or for launching super heavy?
Either. I
Well,
think.
'cause I was gonna
I mean,
say,
I
I
don't
think
know.
they
I don't
could.
know if we'll see a Starship on a super heavy booster in 2021, but I sure hope we will.
I think we will. I think
I-
that's unless something goes like catastrophically wrong with the first super heavy test flights or a Starship flight between now and then. I think it is. I would bet that we'll see a Starship on a super heavy booster stacked for the first orbital launch attempt next year. Just based on, I mean, think about where we were in January of 2020,
It's true. It's
like,
crazy how
and how
how the
far
the progress
along
has
Starship has
accelerated.
gotten in 1 year.
Yep.
I mean, in theory, you could take one of these types of Starship prototypes. If you had a super heavy ready to go, you could take one of these and attempt to reach orbit with it. The only difference is you need 3 vacuum engines on the front, which we know they've been testing vacuum engines for a little bit now. So they might have, they're probably not too far from having 3 vacuum engines ready to go. And that's
Yeah.
kind of the major difference, right? I don't know.
I think the
Yeah.
biggest
Fair
open
point.
question is not like technical readiness. I mean, that's definitely a question, and there's lots of risk and things could go wrong. It's a test program, and there will probably be delays. I think it's hard to say, but maybe a year from now with a full stack, could it be done in time? I don't know. It really depends on how a lot of things go, and I'm sure they're going to do plenty of high altitude, high Mach flight testing.
Hmm.
But the question I have is, can they reach orbit without that FAA environmental review being complete? Because that I think will definitely take a long time. That's just bureaucratic process,
Sure.
and I don't know if we'll get a new environmental assessment within a year. So I think that could be the regulatory side could be the long pull item in terms of reaching orbit.
Unless they could have sort of experimental permits for initial test flights that can go without the environmental assessment. I don't know exactly how that
Well, they
process
won't be
works.
able they won't be able to build anything though that's permanent without the environmental assessment.
Right. So good points all around. I'm gonna go along with some more questions here. A super chat question here from Thomas. Thank you so much for your support. Was a Mars mission possible in the 1980s with infinite money? There
I
were
mean,
lots
anything
of
is.
well, yeah, I would argue anything is possible with infinite. Almost anything is possible with infinite money. But there were concepts to immediately follow up the Apollo program with missions to Mars, including Saturn V architecture. There was the Nova rocket. Even the space shuttle was part of a broader system that was supposed to support missions such as going to Mars, along with other vehicles. So possible in the 80s, especially with infinite money, absolutely. Of course, that's not how it happened, but yes, and you can look up the original space transportation system, which is where STS for the shuttle program comes from. The shuttle was only like one part of that giant system, which would have included many missions to the moon and Mars in that system. Look up the Nova rocket. I'm sure there are other ones I'm forgetting, but there were lots of concepts and ideas to evolve Apollo into Mars missions, and so certainly would have been possible.
I'm still mad we never did a space station made out of shuttle external tanks. That would have been
Yeah,
awesome.
that was another thing. Lots of weird ways to use spent rocket stages once they're on orbit, and that's still kind of hanging around every once in a while. People think, well, we'll use them as like a station module or something like that, so it could be
I mean,
interesting.
Skylab was a
Right.
converted Saturn V upper stage, third
Yep.
stage, something like that. And Skylab, I still, to this day, I watch videos of astronauts on Skylab, and I just feel my heart hurt at the state of our current space station. I mean, I love the ISS, but it seems so cramped and
Right.
so, I don't know, archaic compared to the images we got from Skylab of like people flipping around and so much space and wow. And I don't even care if that's not practical or whatever. I just think, you know, the optics are pretty substantially different. But yeah, I'm all for using spent or converted stages for construction later down the road. It just seems like a no-brainer to me, right? I mean, you already spent the delta V to get it into orbit. Why not?
Right.
Also, Shuttle C would have been really awesome. We're gonna get Chris B in here talking about the shuttle. Shuttle C would have been so cool. All right, I'll stop now.
And another mark on your bingo cards for those playing along at home. But I'm gonna keep going on. Turbo with a question here. Do you think this is the final size of Starship, or do you think they will keep scaling it up bigger? I believe Elon has said in the past that this is the initial size of the Starship family, but they will eventually continue to evolve up to larger diameter vehicles. They want to get up to like the size of the original interplanet transport system type vehicle, which was I think 12 meters in diameter. Starship is currently 9 meters. So I do think SpaceX's plans are to scale up the vehicle into even heavier vehicles that can carry even more payloads and things like that. But I don't know if that'll still be called Starship or they'll call it something else. But I do believe that Starship will be scaled into even bigger ships. I believe or I think Elon was quoted once saying that this original Starship will at some point look like a lifeboat or look like a rowboat, excuse me, or something like that, because they want to make so much bigger vehicles. So I do believe they're going to make them bigger.
Yeah, currently the Starship system is a 9-meter diameter system, and I think Elon has tweeted about making it an 18-meter diameter system.
Yeah,
Obviously, an Elon tweet does not reality make, but
right.
interesting that that is something that is, being thought about and thrown around at the very, very least.
Here's a good question here from Steven. Any plans for a rocket-only craft, so no concerns about aerodynamics, just near vacuum landings? As a matter of fact, there are, and it's called the Starship Human Landing System. So SpaceX has proposed a variant of Starship that won't have the aerodynamic control surfaces on it, in order to serve as a lunar lander, because you don't need aerodynamics to land on the moon. It's a near vacuum. And that vehicle will launch to orbit on a super heavy booster, can get refueled in low Earth orbit from the tanker variant of Starship, and be used to transport astronauts and cargo between lunar orbit and the lunar surface, docking with Lunar Gateway or docking with an Orion spacecraft to get its crew. It'll launch uncrewed and only get crew once it's in orbit already. And so that is 100% something that SpaceX is not only proposing, but planning to use as part of NASA's Artemis program. And because that vehicle won't ever land on Earth, at most it'll return to Earth orbit for refueling, but it won't actually land on Earth. It'll just be reused between lunar orbit and the lunar surface back and forth that way. Never needs to land in an atmosphere, so it won't have the aerodynamic control services and things like that. Also means it won't need the heat shield as much because it won't ever re-enter an atmosphere. So a lot of benefits to using it in that particular role.
I'm just quickly checking what our ambient audio is sounding like. It was super windy earlier,
Mm-hmm.
so I hadn't checked it out because we had to rush so much to set up. But as we get closer to probably some more intense venting as the activity picks up, just seeing if we have anything workable. But right now it sounds okay. I think it sounds like some construction noises in the background. But I'll leave that up.
I believe I've been muted on my end. There
Is
we
that
go.
like
I
a
hear it now.
jackhammer going, or is it a motor of some sort?
It's hard to tell.
It's
We
like an
normally-
old-timey steam engine, like.
I can assure you that I'm not hammering.
Ha ha.
There's no end to the amount of pleasure that gave me. Thank you.
We
We got a
Eh,
question from our member
yeah, go ahead.
Discord. Somebody wondered from Earth to Mars in our member Discord asking how they will unhook Starship when it's on top of the booster. And I do have an answer for this one. If you remember when the high bay was built, they had Bluezilla, that much bigger crane than Tankzilla, at least in that configuration. They had like a little cage that people could get into, and then that would be lifted by the crane. They could go all the way up to the very top of the high bay. So I imagine some sort of crane with a little lifting cage, whatever you want to call those, crew cage, would be able, if cherry pickers are not tall enough, to get people in the right position to undo those shackles. The lifting squid, as we call it.
I still think we're gonna see like an automated squid at some point. Probably not like a Matrix style thing, like the enforcer things from the Matrix, but probably like we see at the Cape where we have that automated cap that the crane operator just sort of gets into position and then it all and you don't have to send anybody all the way up to the top of the Falcon 9. I bet you once they get the processes sort of spooled out, like a little bit more lined out, instead of the squid and the ultra booms or whatever, you'll see this completely automated solution that just you lift it up there and it goes and slots in and it's got little guide teeth and stuff like that, and then it connects to the 6 points or however many they go with. I really think that's going to be cool when we see that. I do not put it past SpaceX to make something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I mean we've talked about the hexagrabber, some kind of octagrabber variant for Starship instead of for Falcon 9, and I can totally see the same thing for a lifting cap. I mean the 6 lifting points on the nose cone are what is that, hexagonal hexasymmetry? I don't know. Six sided symmetry, whatever.
Yeah, hexagonal symmetry probably. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean that shouldn't be too hard for an automated system to line up with. And I mean, yeah, I expect so much of what we see right now in a couple years will look like basically hilarious. Like I can't believe they did it like that. Now it's all a shiny, gleaming white and steel, machine that just you input a vehicle and it outputs a launched vehicle. I mean, that wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah.
And just a quick update, we're seeing some more frost developing at the top of the liquid oxygen tank, so frosting continue to increase as they continue to progress through the cryogenic test, so another sign that the test is going well so far.
You can see on the far left of your screen right now, it's a little bit of venting from that grass area. That's what we call the grass vent. Sometimes we talk about it, people are wondering what that is because it's slightly off frame, but on the far left side of the robot view right now, you can see that grass vent going a bit.
I gotta say, Michael, good job on making the robot colors a little bit more vibrant here. I looked over at it and I was like, wait a second, did Mary change the camera? Like, what happened here? But there's actually blue in the sky now instead of the apocalyptic Mars-looking look that we had from before. So thanks for spending time on that. It looks good.
Well, it had nothing to do for like 8 hours yesterday when we were
When we were all waiting for this test to happen yesterday, even though it didn't happen yesterday.
the sky. You can see right there, the sky color is not perfectly matching right now, but it's at least closer. And there's unfortunately not a ton of settings on the robot. You can't like change certain colors. You can only change all the colors at once, or the white balance. So I don't think we'll be able to get much better than this. But I don't think people are gonna complain if it's off by that small of a margin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're rapidly entering the territory of why is broadcast camera equipment so expensive? Well, it's because you have a guy that all he does is color, and he sits in a room in a broadcast control center, and he looks at all of the cameras and he adjusts their color on a waveform and a vector scope, and does all of that sort of behind the scenes stuff to make sure all the cameras match. And we're shooting this with robots and DSLRs, so
Well,
maybe
it's time
someday
out.
we will have a broadcast control room and fancy fiber optic linked cameras, or at least ones that we can go into and color remotely. I know like Blackmagic has a bunch of production cameras that you can do stuff like that with. So maybe, but right now this is really good, Michael. Good job.
Yeah, it looks nice.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not hating.
Yeah. Hey, you make do with what you got. It's not $100,000 worth of camera gear out there, and still we're able to bring some really awesome views of what's happening.
Yeah, $250,000 lens, $100,000 camera body, $10,000 tripod. I mean, this broadcast equipment adds up quick, and there's a reason movies and TV shows cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, or if not millions, to make.
I could deploy 100 robots if I had $100,000. All the parts and components. I could probably get a bulk discount then. Buy some refurb cameras or something. But we could put a lot of robots out there. You wouldn't be able to spit without spitting on a NASA spaceflight robot at Boca Chica if we had that kind of money.
We could do like the whole Matrix bullet time rig where we have like 36 cameras in a circle, and then we can cut to them in sequence and get like that cool like whoa Matrix effect of the bullet time thing.
Where it cuts to, but you hit the button and it just cut to all the cameras in the script around the. That would be cool.
Yeah.
All right, Chad. Don't give DOS any ideas. All right.
It's not the ideas I need. We have plenty of ideas. You should say, "Don't give DOS the super chats," or there may be a line of robots out there one day.
I guess that's the limiting factor. Yeah.
But for real, do give DOS the super chats.
Speaking of super chats, there's some that I should probably speed run really quick because we're a little bit behind on them. So Arianespace with the super chat just says, thanks for the ongoing coverage. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it. Johan, thanks to all of you for making my Tuesday less boring. Happy to, and thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. The Go Fishing channel with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much for your support. And then we've got some super chat questions. So I'm going to take this one from Christopher. I wonder how similar the connection from Pad A and Pad B to Starship is to the connection that the booster and Starship will be. Thoughts? Oh, this is a good question. Okay. So we know, I think, because all of the fueling connections are right at the base of the vehicle, right? They pump the methane and oxygen. Obviously, during a real countdown today, they're just doing nitrogen. But they pump those commodities into Starship through the base of the vehicle. And you have to keep in mind that the orbital refueling element of Starship, those kind of ports, they're not really a docking port, it's just kind of like a fueling line that connects to one another, are also in the engine section in the base of the vehicle. I don't know, these are test vehicles, I doubt they have like the on-orbit refueling connection on them, but down the road, the plan is for Starships to kind of dock at the two aft ends, will dock to one another, and that's how they do the orbital refueling. I think that same connection will be used to connect the Starship vehicle to the Super Heavy booster, and the Super Heavy booster will connect sort of similarly to the ground support equipment, so that the fuel gets pumped into both stages kind of through the base of Super Heavy and either up into the Starship or into Super Heavy itself, and then that connection also enables on-orbit refueling. I think that's how I understand the system to be designed. Michael or Jack, either of you heard any differently or know anything other details?
Yeah, that would make sense to me. That would be a. I'm trying to think if there are any operational rockets that use anything remotely like that, and
Most rockets have different fueling lines via like an umbilical tower or something to connect to the different stages.
Yeah, when you don't need to have them connected for any purpose in flight, it's simply just to connect the second stage up through some sort of ground support tower or whatever.
Right.
And have separate lines. So I think that in itself would be sort of a new thing that we've not really seen before.
I think it's probably a good bet that anytime and anywhere that they can have commonality in this system between Starship and booster number one, they do. So yeah, good point, good question.
It does sort of get you into the inefficiency again, though, where Starship is such the big honking beast that's just going to bash its way into orbit, right? Because think about it: if you have the gantry crane or the gantry that stays on the ground, and you got the tower and all your fuel lines and stuff like that go up to the level of the second stage or whatever, and then they just hop over and connect into one port right in the side of the rocket. You don't have to have all that piping and infrastructure built into the rocket, and you don't have to carry it with you, right? Whereas with Starship, because of the tail-to-tail refueling, and you could use that same infrastructure to pump the fuel all the way up from the ground, you're ending up carrying those parts of the rocket with you again. But that's what we talked about in the past. It almost doesn't matter because Starship's like, what? You're going to add like a ton? I don't care. Whatever, I'm going to orbit.
Completely irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
In the scheme of Starship mass capabilities, it's so overpowered. And it's kind of how SpaceX built the Falcon fleet, to be honest. How did they solve the problem where you have to reserve fuel for landing? Oh, we'll just make Merlin the most overpowered rocket engine ever, right? And have 9 of them. So they kind of overbuild them so they have the performance margin for those kind of things, and that's what's enabled them to be reusable that way.
It's like, how did you solve the icing problem? What? No, I added more thrust.
What icing problem? Exactly.
What icing problem? I added more thrust. It's fine. I'll carry the ice.
Right, exactly. So hopefully that answered your question, however, and I'm going to keep moving on here. Another question here. How about, we just talked about this. Well, I just talked about this. Get to that in a second. For point-to-point flight on Earth, will Super Heavy be necessary, or can Starship do it alone? So SpaceX has plans to use Starship as a vehicle to transport people and cargo from one place to another on Earth via suborbital spaceflight, and that can be done with just Starship alone up to a certain distance. Elon tweeted recently somewhere around 10,000 kilometers distance. You can do it with just Starship. Any farther than that, and you'll probably want to use the Super Heavy booster, even though it's still a suborbital flight. It also depends on how much payload you're actually carrying. But so there's plans to kind of probably do a combination of both depending on what the route is. But if you want to read more about that, there's this great article on NASASpaceflight.com written by yours truly about that kind of topic. And meanwhile, yeah, we've got a big vent right now.
Yeah, look at that. Is that? That looks like a deep press vent.
Well,
okay,
it's a big vent. During a proof, I think there's a small one up there, but during a proof test, they usually have big vents. They often have vents like this, and it usually means they're starting to fast fill. Versus on a normal, static fire or launch, if we see something like this, it usually means they scrubbed. But if I remember correctly, I think on a proof test, this is usually actually a good sign.
So yeah, this does not look bad to me. At least partly because we're not seeing the double vent. The deep press vent is a double vent.
But there is a vent higher up, though. It's just smaller.
Yeah, it's not that. And look at the difference between the two vents. You see lower on Starship where we get that ice ring that's starting to form down about the middle of the flaps. It's just sort of like flying out. It's no big deal. It's just venting sort of slowly versus that vent we just saw stop was a high pressure vent. There was a lot of pressure behind the gases coming out of that. So that's what we'd say. One thing, another thing. It's just different things to watch that Starship's doing here.
Yeah, you spend enough time watching these things for hours and hours and you start to notice patterns.
Right.
Also, you start to go a little crazy, but mostly patterns.
You got to earn your tank watching Stripes, Jack.
Stripes? Okay, so does that mean we're going to need a new shirt with stripes on it for different ranks?
No, it was just something to say. I was just making a statement.
Fine.
Well, we'll get the little shoulder, what do they call, epaulettes or something? Epaulettes? With the every test vehicle you're involved with watching, you get another bar on your epaulette.
Look at that. There was a little a quick vent there.
Yeah. But again, that's not really a sign that they're depressing or anything like that.
Yeah. If I remember in the past, I think that's a sign they are going to start, but that they are starting to fill this thing up quicker. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, keep your eye on that frost ring down there.
Right, that'll be the thing to watch is the frost.
Yep.
So far, I'm not seeing a change. I'm doing some A/B testing. If you rewind your YouTube stream a couple of seconds, you can use that to compare any changes. And so far, I'm not seeing anything. We'll keep watching.
Question here from Pink Mouse. Do you think they will test the booster alone first or with a Starship stacked? We actually know the answer to this. They are going to do hop tests with the first Super Heavy booster. Elon has confirmed that. So they will do sort of vertical takeoff, vertical landing tests of a Super Heavy booster, just like they did with some of the early Starship vehicles, before doing any testing with a stacked Starship Super Heavy stack. And another question here from TJ, who asks, is the Super Heavy booster number 1 the same diameter as the Starship SNs? And that is yes. Both Starship and the Super Heavy booster are 9 meters in diameter. And a question here from William is, since Starship is technically a second stage, will there have to be major modifications to the design to accommodate the vacuum engine? We do know, so right now we've only seen Starships with the 3 sea-level Raptor engines on board because they're not doing tests they're not firing their engine at high enough altitude where they need a vacuum optimized engine. The orbital version, the part that will go to space, will have those 3 engines plus 3 vacuum engines around the outside. And if you look at shots of the engine bay on Starship, you can see they've left the space where the vacuum engines would go. The thrust puck will need to be slightly different to accommodate all the plumbing connections and the forces for 6 engines instead of 3. But the 3 CLO engines will stay right where they are, and they'll add those 3 vacuum engines on the outside. And they'll have to modify the thrust puck to do that, which involves plumbing and things like that. But I don't know if you call that major modifications, but that's what they'll need to change to go to space.
Still not seeing much change in frost.
Yeah, me neither. Neither is that car that just talked, apparently.
Somebody just wanted to be on the stream.
Right. We've had, what was it, forklift guy back in the early days of Starship testing who was, beeping on every stream.
Yeah.
With,
Whatever happened to forklift guy?
When Tim and I were there for Starhopper events and we were on Nomad's roof, there were numerous times where a vehicle drove by and honked a whole bunch, and people leaned out the windows like, "Hey!" So yeah, it's fairly common. I don't know if they were employees or just people or what, but pretty hilarious either way.
Some super chat questions that have come through here. Here is one about the different variants of Starship. Again, we were talking about ones that need aerodynamic services. To render on Earth or on Mars, you need those flap control services because you're landing in an atmosphere. So for control, you need those versus landing on the moon where you don't need them because there's no atmosphere on the moon. So this one's asking about how that would work for a Mars mission. And the Starship vehicle going from Earth to Mars could be the same vehicle the entire way because you need those aerodynamic control services both on Earth and Mars. For Moon, if you want to launch crew from Earth, not on, say, an Orion spacecraft, which is the plan for the Artemis program, but down the line, if you want to evolve it to launching on a Starship vehicle, sure, if you could use the winged, flapped, whatever you want to call it, Starship to land on the moon. The flaps wouldn't get in the way, but they'd be a little extra weight and things like that, so you might opt to use the lunar optimized variant, which could mean docking to a aerodynamic controlled Starship to land back on Earth afterwards. But you could also rendezvous at the Lunar Gateway Station or something like that. This question's asking about using the ISS, similar concept. But again, I think it would be probably easier just to dock a Starship to a Starship. Or just use the same vehicle to land both on the moon and on Earth, excuse me. SpaceX has there's different plans to do that. Go ahead, Michael.
I was going to say quickly, the frost, or the condensation at least, is definitely increasing now.
Oh yeah, I see it.
So we should see that frosting over
on the bottom of the tank now, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, excellent.
And that's not too long after that long sort of high pressure vent that we saw, so that could again have been a sign that the frost is about to increase more rapidly, and they are continuing to progress through the test.
I'm sure the spreadsheet crew will be jotting all this down.
Someone asked me somewhere else
Thank you,
on the
spreadsheet
internet.
crew.
Someone else on the internet asked me about that spreadsheet that we reference sometimes, and we don't have the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet was made by one of our YouTube members who has tracked sort of every Starship content that's happened so far and used that to kind of predict the timelines for different sorts of things. So that's what we're talking about when we say the spreadsheet, by the way.
Yeah.
When we do have it, they've shared it in our member chat, but it's not something
I've never
we
seen
maintain.
the spreadsheet. So
I've seen it. Yeah, it's a thing. I've seen it.
What? I could have
I
sworn I posted it in our live stream channel where we all post our things. So, huh?
apparently I do have access to the spreadsheet, but I've never seen it. I guess I have to look for that. I have my own spreadsheet, not with nothing related to. I have a spreadsheet that tracks all these launch stats, and I update that every month. And I'm probably moving it away from a spreadsheet because I've started tracking so much info that the spreadsheet now lags. So changing that a little bit, but I have not. But apparently that's out there. And if you're a YouTube member, I know in our Discord that gets discussed a lot, and you're probably familiar with what we're talking about. But shout out
Did
to
you
our
ever-
YouTube members who do a lot of that tracking and stuff. They
Yeah,
pick up on a lot of
it's
things that we don't pick up on, and it's appreciated.
it's
you ever
Adrian
answer Elon, by the way?
that does all that. So, and everyone else in our Discord kind of helps him out when they're not able to watch it, or they're not on the stream or whatever, and they'll log back onto the member Discord, and our awesome other members will be like, hey, here's the timeline. So it's
Right.
awesome. And I mean, that's exactly the kind of information too that is extremely useful to track for predicting what happens going forward.
Thomas, I was going to ask, did you ever answer Elon? Was that a question the other day
Oh
about
yeah.
the
Well,
up
so
mass
here's what
versus
happened.
satellite
Yeah.
count?
So Stephen Marr posted a very cool photo of all the Falcon 9 boosters that launched missions this year, which is something like only 11 boosters for their 25 orbital flights. Again, reused. And Elon had responded to his tweet asking about if SpaceX had launched a majority of the payloads to orbit that year. Something about they launched like a quarter of the flights, but they were talking about payloads and payload mass. And I know Chris Bergen responded to Elon tagging me because he knows I track that kind of stuff, and kind of set me up for failure because I don't track up mass. I only track number of payloads, and the reason for that is that we don't know the mass of a lot of payloads. If they're a classified mission, or if they're missions from especially like Chinese missions or Russian military missions, we don't know the specs of those payloads. So it's kind of hard to certifiably or have any confidence in those mass figures. You can approximate, and I think next year I'm going to try and approximate the best I can. But it's hard to track up mass specifically. Payloads, it's much easier, and we were able to figure out that SpaceX has launched more than half of the spacecraft into orbit, largely thanks to Starlink missions. But as far as up mass, probably, but it's less confidence behind that question. So I tried to answer it the best I can, yeah, but it's hard to get exact numbers on mass and things like that.
Gotcha. I remember I linked that tweet up in chat if anybody was interested in finding that tweet. The photo of what was it? Falcon 9 boosters of 2020. It was 11 boosters, I guess, right, for 26 launches.
Yeah, it was 26 launches, including the in-flight abort test. 25 orbital launches is what SpaceX did this year.
There you go. And I'll post it from my name too. There we go. There's actually for my name instead of the other computer. I was on the wrong computer.
There you go. Some more questions here. Actually, we got some super chats here. Dougal, a regular on the stream, just says, Happy Christmas and Merry New Year all. Thanks for showing all the interesting views this year. Thank you for tuning in, Dougal, and we appreciate the kind words.
Is that
Patrick?
a Coming to America reference, Dougal? Merry New Year. That's Coming to America. I swear that's from
Is that where that's from?
You know they're
I think
remaking that movie. They're remaking that movie.
Yeah,
Don't ruin
I
my
saw that.
day, Das.
Yeah.
Don't you ruin my day. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to hear about it. There is only one of those movies, and it has already been made.
It was on TV the other day, and so I was Googling it. I was like, wait, what's that guy's name again? The guy that serves the burgers at the burger place, the
Louis Anderson?
red-haired. No. He looks like the bad guy from Mission Impossible, and I was like, I don't think that's the same guy. But that was the topic of our discussion the other day here at the household, here at the DOS household. The burger
Solid
guy is not
discussion.
the same as the bad guy from Mission Impossible.
More questions here. We got one from Parker who says, is there any way we could see a stripped down expendable Starship without control surfaces and heat shields, etc. to increase payload? I believe Elon has hinted at such a possibility. He might have called it like Star Kicker or something. Basically, instead of a Starship upper stage, you basically just have a Raptor powered stainless steel upper stage with some sort of expendable fairing on the top that can push like a probe to deep space, like a very heavy probe, or a probe to a deep space location very quickly. I believe that possibility has been thrown out there. But keep in mind that in order to do that, the launch cost would instantly become much higher because you can probably still get the super heavy booster back, but that upper stage becomes expendable and is no longer a fully reusable system. So the launch cost would go up to do that. Of course,
with the payload capacity, you would only have to beat rockets like SLS on price, which beating SLS on price isn't too difficult. So potentially that's something that could exist. But and that has been hinted at, but no like firm plans or anything. Like it'll be interesting to see if SpaceX goes that route. I wonder if it would be easier or more price sort of, or cost effective is the word I'm looking for, to have a fully reusable Starship and Super Heavy launch system, but in the payload bay have a smaller sort of expendable kick stage with a probe and do it that way, so you still get the Starship back and the expendable part is a smaller stage. Not sure. Might be interesting to see that architecture too. Kind of how they did it with the space shuttle.
If you end up getting 100 tons to orbit, that is one heck of a kick stage. Like,
Right.
you could go a long way if you have 100 tons in orbit and you got fuel in your payload. I mean, that is a lot. That's a big kick stage, or multiple kick stages, whatever you want to do.
Right.
So that would be interesting to see. Like, imagine it opens up and then another little spacecraft comes out and then it floats away and starts its own bird. What's the saying? Like, once you're in orbit, you're halfway to anywhere. It's almost
Right,
like
exactly,
three-quarters of the way to anywhere. Yeah. So.
How many starships can we fit inside other starships instead of other starships? Eventually, you'll just have like an ITS scale starship with a smaller starship inside of that, with a small kick stage attached to a Dragon capsule or something ridiculous.
It would be really interesting to see like a design study for what would like a Star 48 carrying a light interplanetary probe out of Starship. You know, how would that do? Or I have questions. I have many questions.
Yeah, and if you go with a uncrewed Starship sort of carrying that as I'm going to call it the wrapper, right? Like the bus that takes it up to orbit,
Sure.
you avoid some of the concerns about the shuttle idea where they were going to have the fueled stage and the payload bay of the shuttle
Right,
and
on
then
a
take
crewed
it up.
vehicle, right.
Yeah, on a crewed vehicle is a different sort of thing. They sort of
Oh,
did
yeah.
not go with that because the crew had to ride with the shuttle to get it to orbit, you know?
Yeah,
Right.
the Centaur was a Centaur, right? I think that was a.
It was like it was derived from, it was some version of Centaur, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they stopped doing that after Challenger, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe they just never did it.
The actual name was called the inertial upper stage.
Interesting
Well,
name
is
for
Is
it.
that the one that actually flew, or is that the one
RCS
that never actually flew?
testing on the nose cone.
Oh,
look
yeah,
at
look
that.
at that. Oh, and
RCS
those,
test.
too.
It's an RCS test.
Yep.
and those are definitely RCS thrusters.
And there's a time delay, y'all. You're not going to hear the audio exactly match. They're tricking us. It looks like it matches, but that can't be the audio.
It must be.
I
Like
think you're hearing the thruster before when
Yeah.
the next one fires, yeah.
Correct.
Like the delay between thruster fires is almost the same as our time delay from the vehicle to the microphone. Huh.
Frost on the LOX tank is continuing to increase too.
Yeah, there was the last one where we didn't see anything, but we heard the previous one.
Right.
That's cool.
That was very cool to see.
Heck, give us some flap action now if we're going through the
Yeah,
entire...
we've seen RCS testing while they're continuing the cryo-proof. Why not throw some flap? They're not like chained down or anything like they were for SN8, right?
I don't see anything right now.
Yeah, I don't either.
I think they are. They are. Changing.
Maybe there's a
Oh,
line
are
on
they?
the upper right-hand one. You
Yeah,
see
I
that
think they
line?
are.
Alright, so
I
I
don't
guess
s-
no flap testing coming. But
Yeah, I don't see anything hanging down.
Yeah, chat says they are chained down.
well, no flap testing, I guess, but that was so cool, RCS thruster testing.
Sneak in a static fire while you're at it. Like, can you imagine the RCS thruster team are like sitting there just twiddling their thumbs and like, I don't know, should we just twist the thrusters while we're waiting? And they're like, I guess. That's not how it goes.
The thrusters are powered by nitrogen, right? They're the cold gas thrusters, right?
Yes.
So, while they're loading nitrogen commodities, I guess it makes sense.
There you go.
Of course, if they could do a full-up static fire powered by only nitrogen, that would be very impressive, but that's not really how Raptor works.
I mean, we've seen thruster firings like that before, but maybe it's just because they did so many of them in a row there. Those looked big. Am I crazy?
I'm not sure. Maybe.
Could
That
this be
was
like atmospheric conditions? I don't know.
Yeah, make
But
it
yeah, they
appear
did,
more
you're
or
right.
something. Yeah. And maybe it was just because they kept happening this time so we could pay attention to them, right? In the
Yeah.
past, they sort of snuck up on us, And this time it happened, and then we were able to watch it happen over and over again, like pay attention to it.
Yeah, I've seen Starhopper do that exact sequence multiple times, 3 or 4 times.
Is that
So
a drone
it's
or
cool
a
that they just
bird?
did the.
Drone.
Say what?
The drone is flying up the main column of the crane there, about to pass off the top of the screen to the left of the crane right there.
Oh yeah, I just saw it.
Oh, nice.
I thought it was a bird at first, but then it started going straight up, and I'm like, that's not how birds fly.
Birds aren't real, Das. Come on now.
Oh, jeez, he's just going to find a power line to plug into to charge. You know how it is.
Yeah, SpaceX uses that drone, and they've used sort of, as venting continues, those Boston Dynamics robots do. They use those to kind of do inspections and get thermal views of the rocket and things like that when they can't have people at the pad. It's very interesting. Continue on. We've got a couple super chats that have come through here. Patrick Stewart, is that the real Patrick Stewart? Thank you for the super chat and saying thanks for the live stream. Appreciate it. And Pal9000 says, when we saw the LOX fuel dump during SN8's apogee, was that from the same port SpaceX wants to use for fuel transfer on orbit? Thank you, and Mary. That is a good question. It was probably from, the same port that they use for actually fueling. We saw and SpaceX released like an official highlights video and pointed out that at apogee they dumped a bunch of liquid oxygen for whatever reason from sort of the aft of the vehicle. That's probably from the same connection they use for fueling and detanking. So that's where that sort of on-orbit fuel transfer would occur. Again, you need a special like docking port-like receptacle to actually do on-orbit refueling, which I doubt they've put on these test vehicles because you don't really need that. But that's where it would probably take place, yes. Robert with a new membership, thank you for joining on and appreciate it. A super chat here from Rough Rider Show. What is y'all's favorite live stream of 2020? Mine was the SN8 stakeout streams with Das.
Hey!
Das, what was your favorite stream of 2020?
Oh, jeez. I love all of my streams as if they were my children's. Like, I don't know if I can, if I can
asked you about the
choose one.
streams, not the robots, Das.
Not the robots. I mean, that's actually a really hard question for me because every stream we sort of do something new or we sort of upgrade things a little bit, especially for the big events. So every stream is like even more and more exciting. So I can't just say, oh, the last stream we did or this stream or anything like that. I mean, I do think that the SN8 test was really cool because it was the first time we had 4 separate cameras running. We had so many cameras we didn't even pipe in the SpaceX feed because we had enough of our own cameras. They did have some amazing cameras on their feed, but we just had so many of our own. We stuck with them. I think that was a big one for me, just having 4 feeds coming in at the same time and all mostly working, kind of.
Yeah.
As much as I love the SN8 streams, I think I personally liked I don't even know what it was. It might have been like SN3 or something, but we did a couple like party streams really early in the year when we had just started off streaming more often, and Scott Manley and Tim Dodd jumped in, and it was just a big old good time. So that's probably my personal highlight. I think that's the same stream where Elon tweeted that our speculation was mostly accurate and that our commentary was pretty funny. So I'll take it.
Nice.
I think SN8 for me.
You think SN8?
I mean, just the fact that we got, or mostly DOS, but that we managed to pull off a broadcast with 160,000 people watching live, and it didn't fail was a big accomplishment.
It didn't fail.
I mean, there was a lot of, if stuff goes wrong when you have that many people watching, there's a lot of pressure on you. So, luckily, it all worked out thanks to DOS.
It really is a lot of pressure, though. I mean, that our plan for that one was just throw enough cameras at it, and if half of them stay online, we're good.
Right.
But, Jack, just a couple days ago, it feels like when you rolled out to New Mexico, that one was really cool, too.
That's true.
I mean, that was cool. It was the only stream of that.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely really, really enjoyed that Virgin Galactic stream. I mean, we don't only cover SpaceX, so it's always nice to get out and point our cameras when other space companies do stuff. It just so happens that SpaceX does the most frequently and the most spectacular stuff, so that's why we cover it so much. But also, I mean, I would love to cover a Blue Origin launch. I would love to cover more Virgin Galactic launches. There's going to be some Strata launch content coming at some point. So yeah, definitely those weird oddball ones are a lot of fun. No argument there from me, Das.
Good deal.
I would say the only thing that comes close, the SN8 flight stream, probably my favorite of 2020. However, a very close second would be our Demo 2 coverage. Covering the first human launch from the US since 2011 was super cool. Covering things like crew walkout and the crew ingressing and just seeing all of those things happen via our live stream, well, I think was very cool. So I think that's my close second. But I think SN8 tops it just a little bit, just because we had so much more experience live streaming. I think our live stream for that event was actually better. But yeah, I both of those events, and I think it kind of goes hand in hand with what was your favorite spaceflight events of 2020, which I would say SN8 flight and Demo 2. So
My favorite thing about the SN8 stream too was that we had value that the official stream didn't have, which was commentary. So
Yeah.
SpaceX was keeping it very low key for good reasons. They did not want to. I think they just didn't want to put presenters in a position of having to commentate an event like that with so much uncertainty of how it could go. It's not
exactly.
an easy thing for a person to be making real-time official remarks on a company's behalf. So I think it's better for SpaceX just to put out the video and then comment after the fact. But because we were not official, we were able to provide people with commentary
from a different perspective. Yeah.
As opposed to a lot of the other streams, there's already an official webcast with commentary. So I think the best stream that we provided in terms of value all year was SN8.
That's a really good point, Michael, because I'm going to use the term get away with a lot of stuff that SpaceX wouldn't want to do, right? Where we can speculate sometimes and we can get excited about things in different ways and that sort of stuff. And the official company, people officially representing the company do have to work within a little bit of a box. And we lost that box around here. We don't know where it is. We're not sort of like stuck in a little box. We could give you some real-time reactions from regular people. How's that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting we can let Jack go crazy sometimes. So thank you for never putting me on a leash there. I try not to be too insane, but but on that note, I think I'm gonna step away for a little bit and just rest my voice. I'm beat today. I don't know why, but so I'm gonna take a break. I'll let you guys take it over. I can be back in a little bit.
Yeah, all good.
Thank you, Jack, for joining us. That's Jack Beyer, photographer, videographer, video editor extraordinaire for NASASpaceflight. He'll be hopping off for a little bit, but thank you for joining us for some commentary for continued Starship testing coverage.
All right.
I actually want to touch on something that Jack mentioned right before he left, because we had a question in chat about this sort of topic, and I want to touch on this. We talked about we cover things more than SpaceX. SpaceX does more things than anyone else at the moment, so we cover them the most often. But this question is asking, why are we called NASA Spaceflight instead of SpaceX Spaceflight or something like that? So we cover pretty any orbital launch that occurs around the world. We put out article covering those missions. We cover developments for obviously lots of NASA programs such as Artemis, Commercial Crew, ISS programs, all of those kind of things. We cover companies other than SpaceX. We cover SpaceX, United Launch Alliance, Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, all the small sat companies like Rocket Lab, Firefly, Virgin Orbit. And I know I'm gonna not name one, and people are gonna be like, "Oh, you forgot about this one." We covered literally
Maston. I love Maston in the Stratolaunch. Come on, give me some Mojave love.
And we cover international spaceflight. So we cover Russian launches, Chinese launches, Japanese launches, Indian launches, European launches. If you go to the front page of NASA Spaceflight right now, you will find an article on a launch that happened this morning of a Russian Soyuz rocket launched by European operator Arianespace for a French satellite. None of that has anything to do with SpaceX, but we cover it because we cover all of the spaceflight aspects. We're named NASA Spaceflight because when the site first started, it started as coverage of the shuttle program, which is obviously unique to NASA, and the name has not changed since then. But the coverage has expanded to pretty much anything spaceflight related. So you're seeing a lot of SpaceX coverage because SpaceX does a lot of things, and thus we have to cover everything SpaceX does. That includes Boca Chica testing, that includes Falcon 9 launches, etc., etc. But we also cover everything else, and that's why the name's staying right where it is, because we cover NASA and everything, all of NASA's international partners and all of the companies that work with NASA, and even some things that aren't actually related to NASA, but the name's sticking because it's not SpaceX Spaceflight. SpaceX just does a lot of stuff, and so we report on all of it, but we cover lots of things that have nothing to do with SpaceX. Sorry for the mini rant there, but hope that answered the question.
No, all good. That is a fair thing to talk about.
Still waiting for that methane tank to frost up. So far, all the frost has been on the liquid oxygen tank.
And only on the one side of it. I wonder if that's just sunlight causing any frost on the other side to melt instantly.
The frost level has gone down a bit. That's actually, I don't know what causes that, but that is something we have seen before in the past. I don't think that's necessarily a bad sign, but they definitely have not put any significant amounts of liquid nitrogen into that methane tank because we do not see any frost on it right now.
Really quick, just a reminder, if you have any questions about what we're talking about or what we're seeing, feel free to put them in the chat and tag us with @NASASpaceflight. That's what allows us to see your questions and answer them as best we can, even if that involves some speculation, but we try our best. Appreciate everyone hanging out and watching with us and asking questions. We're happy to answer them as best we can. We also got some super chats that I should go really quick.
Really quick though, Thomas, before I actually really do leave, I swear, is just sort of a follow-on to your comments about the site name, NASA Spaceflight. Similarly, I have occasionally seen someone say something along the lines of like, oh, do I have to super chat to ask a question? Absolutely not. And that is exactly what Thomas was just saying. If you have a question, just type @NASA Spaceflight into the chat, and that lets us see the question. We obviously can't get to everybody's question because y'all ask so many good ones, but just wanted to be clear, while we do appreciate the super chats, especially the ones with questions that let us riff on whatever interesting topic, you do not have to super chat to ask a question.
Thank you, Jack. And back to these super chats really quick. Excessive Funk with the super chat. Thank you so much for your support. And Cole Logan with the super chat question. So Starship can launch 100 tons. It could put 3 full Electron rockets by weight, but if you go by size, it could only fit 1 full-size Electron. Electron would make a heck of a kick stage. That's all I'm saying. Thank you very much for the super chat.
Why does Discord not think that thruster is a word? How do you spell thruster? THRU.
STER?
Yeah. For some reason, that's not in the spelling dictionary.
Pretty sure
Anyways.
thrust is a word.
I think it is.
I think you're in the right on this one, Dawson.
I'll consult the Oracle. Let me see here. Yeah, I wonder if it uses like the local dictionary or something like that of whatever browser you're using. What? This is like a fitness website. It's the wrong sort of thruster. Google knows nothing about me.
It's like, yeah, a lot of the times, like if I type it, when I go into my like internet browser and I type the letter N, it doesn't go to nasa.gov, it goes to NASASpaceflight at this point. But like all of my, like if I type one letter in the search bar, 9 times out of 10, it's a spaceflight related website of some kind.
Ah, yes. Thruster. Yeah, it's spelled correctly. Discord just doesn't think it is. Thruster McThrusty face. Whoa, careful there, NASA Spaceflight. We're family-friendly stream around here.
Jeez. Let's see, we got another super chat here from No Seas. Says, as always, thanks for the amazing coverage. Thank you so much for your support. Appreciate it. Again, if you're just joining us, we are here for cryogenic proof testing of Starship SN9, which is continuing. We can see some venting from the vehicle, some frost/condensation forming on the vehicle, so the test is ongoing. We also saw some RCS thruster testing just a little bit ago, so more SN9 testing being conducted today.
Yeah. How's the window looking? It goes until 5 local, and it's 3:37 right now, isn't it? So
yep.
Just
so we got about an hour and a
half
half left.
Yeah, gotcha. And again, y'all, with streams like this, we don't have any specific indication. We can't tell you, oh, at exactly this time, this exact thing is going to happen. That's not how SpaceX rolls with these tests. They say there's a window. And I think that today the window was from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. local time, wasn't it, y'all?
Correct.
I think so,
Yes.
yeah. It was 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. local, and what we do is we sit there, and we've got the robots spooled up, and Mary's out there looking at what's happening, and we'll watch what's going on, and then we won't actually start our commentary stream until there's some specific indication that they're really doing anything. So I've had tons of people hopping into Fleet Cam, which is our 24/7 live stream from Port Canaveral, watching the booster processing, the fairing catch-ups and stuff like that, right? But people keep jumping into Fleet Cam saying, oh, Dus, what's going on? Are you going to stream or not? Like, oh, they're doing a test today. And we're like, we know, but we're not sending out 200,000 notifications until there's an indication that they're doing something that we really want to show. And yesterday, that's sort of what happened, right? They had a window all day yesterday, but we didn't do a stream because they never progressed to this point where there was specific activity that was telling us that there was something that we wanted to share with people. So that's sort of how we do that. That's how we make those decisions. Are we going to go live? Are we going to send out all these notifications? Are we going to wait? There's another vent. Thank you, Starship. We know that just because the window's there, that's exciting. Okay, good. They've declared a window. Good. Step one. And then the road's closed. Oh, man, the road's closed. Yeah, cool. The road. Okay, good. That's another step in the right direction. But if the pad's not clear. And, oh, the pad's clear. Okay, yeah, good. Well, guess what? The pad cleared a couple hours before we actually started the testing here today. The pad was clear for some amount of time before we spooled up the stream. But then we saw the tank farm actually fire up. Not just a little, oh, here's a little vent, here's one little thing. No, we saw activity at the tank farm. There was an indication there was something that we wanted to show y'all, that we wanted to share with y'all, and that's when we get the live stream going. So don't fret if you hear about some event, somebody on Twitter is like, oh, yeah, there's a window, there's a road closure or whatever. Don't fret. It is hard for SpaceX to do anything at Boca Chica without Mary being out there letting us know what's going on, and then us bringing up the live streams to share those events with you. Just don't fret. You're always welcome to ask, but don't fret.
And I have been seeing some super small puffs of gas coming out of that upper vent for the methane tank, so hopefully that's a good sign.
Yeah, just to touch on what Das was saying there, full disclosure, yesterday I spent most of the day working on NSF articles and playing Kerbal Space Program waiting for SpaceX to do something, and sometimes that's just how it is.
Yep. I mean, it's the same thing. Michael was working on server stuff and the robot and stuff like that, the color balance and stuff. And then I was over here building more robots to get in boxes and ship as fast as possible. I'm supposed to be doing that right now, actually, and I probably need to focus on that a little bit more. But we'll sit here, like we literally go on call, and there's nothing really happening, but the NASASpaceflight team is on call. And then all of a sudden, I mean, today Michael said, oh, there it is, the pad farm's active. And then within a few minutes, we're all ready to go. Everything's spooled up, and we get y'all the live stream going. So we're not, if there's a test window, we're paying attention. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I have alarms set in 30-minute intervals because I'm on the West Coast. So an 8 a.m. test window opens at 6 a.m. here. So I have alarms set in 30-minute intervals to make sure I keep waking up to check if anything's happening. So that if we need to go live, we do.
What a life. We need to get you like some sort of button we can press that rings a bell next to your bed, so you don't have to be constantly waking up. It's just like, let us East Coasters handle that early morning stuff, and then we'll administer the electroshock or whatever to get you out of bed when it's go time. The bat signal. I like it. Yeah, the bat signal or something like that.
Some more questions here. Here's a good one. How do they get the payload into the payload bay on Starship? Do they lay it vertical for that? So this is talking about moving into operations with a Starship sort of payload bay. I believe based on the payload user's guide that SpaceX did put out, a very preliminary user's guide for Starship vehicle, that they plan to integrate payloads vertically. So I don't know if that means installing it in the payload bay and then like installing the entire payload section on top of the tank section, or what I think would be more likely is just opening the payload bay and installing it vertically in that orientation. It'll be interesting to see how exactly they do that, but I believe the plan is vertical integration. So
that's one of those things. Like right now, you'd be hard pressed to get a non-gaseous payload into the payload area of Starship SN9. Because there's not really a way to get anything of any real I'd say volume, but you could just pump a gas into it, whatever. There's no way to get anything inside of it right now, right? It doesn't have the shark mouth opening or whatever, and it doesn't have like a big hatch on one side where you could open it up and then put the payload in. These are still the test articles that they're working on. They're not designed for that. And is that one of the tri-vents going?
Yeah, it looks like it.
But it's like a duo vent right now because I don't see a vent coming from the right-hand side. That's interesting. What do y'all think the tri-vent would mean here?
I don't remember seeing that on SN8's proof tests. I could
Yeah.
be wrong, but it might just be testing out some systems.
New plumbing or new valves or something like that. Normally the tri-vent is something we look for coming up on a static fire. So, of course, not what we're expecting here. And that isn't a full-on tri-vent. That's sort of like a lazy tri-vent, it looks like. It's not a high-pressure vent.
We did not see the methane recondenser go on, and so there was no chance of static fire today. Also, Mary would have gotten an alert notice. It's another reason we know
Yep.
that it's a proof test today, not a static fire.
Yeah, it's a static fire with liquid nitrogen. Yeah, that's not really a thing.
That's not
static
a thing.
fire with liquid nitrogen.
Well, I guess technically they static fired the RCS thrusters. Technically, they fired them without moving. That's a
But
static
there's no
fire by
fire.
definition,
Move,
right?
Yeah, that's true. All right. But it's a
I think
cold
it has to be
gas
fire.
thruster. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be fire.
Can you call it a static fire if there's no fire involved?
No, that's my opinion.
Hey, look, there's the third
Okay,
vent.
Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting.
But anyway, I think we might have a new voice here on comms in a minute here. Chris Bergen, do we have you?
No, I'm not here.
No.
Nobody here but us Mises.
Chris
Got things to
Bergen,
do.
managing editor for NASASpaceflight. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
How you doing, Chris?
That RCS thruster test was brilliant.
Yeah, we've never seen.
I was surprised by it. I'm trying to work out if that was more power involved with the RCS than we've seen before. I have never seen thruster
Right, we were
testing
talking
like
about
that level before. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking, maybe they've improved something for SN9.
That's exactly what we were saying, and I don't know. Was it just that it went on for so long we could pay more attention to it? It didn't like sneak up on us or
No.
whatever. I don't have to repeat it. I know you're watching the stream, right?
Yeah.
It looked more powerful than what we've seen in the past. I don't know, but it looked more visible. Let's put it that way.
What caught me out was it was not just the occasional puff from the top like we've seen before. This was all the thrusters, all firing in sequence. There's literally a guy probably in the control room going, right, 1, 3, 5, 2, 5. Just like I'm fun with it. I'm thinking literally went through all the thruster cycle. So that everything seemed a lot smoother to me. We've seen testing before, but I've never seen the full sequence like that before. And not as much power coming out of them as before. Honestly, I think there's something different going on there. I think it's improved. I should do what everyone else does and just at Elon for the next 10 minutes. At Elon! and the thrusters improved. At Elon!
Wait for him to say what he had for lunch, and then just add him with all the questions about the thruster firing.
I think he tweeted something about robots, dancing robots.
Yeah.
It's the first
the
reply
Boston
was
Dynamics video, yeah.
Yeah. The first
That was a cool
reply was Cybertruck when. People asking just all sorts of random questions on there.
I don't know if I envy the guy that, like, you to post up something else that you're excited about, and then everybody just starts trying to get information out of you about it. And he answers sometimes. I mean, he's not there whining about it or whatever.
No.
We appreciate the bits of information that we get that way, but jeez.
All right, y'all. Chris is actually here to cover
Yeah,
for me and
looking
Jack
through this.
leaving, so I'm gonna go ahead and hop off.
Yeah, I was
for a
going to
little
say,
bit.
you're going to get off, Thomas, or what?
Yeah. I'm gonna head off, but thank you everyone for tuning in and stay tuned for more coverage. But Thomas Burkhart, reporter for NASASpaceflight, I'm gonna head off for the day and catch you guys on a future live stream. Thanks for joining us.
Good deal. Take it easy,
Wow.
Thomas.
See everybody.
All right, so Chris, it's your turn. Take it away.
Oh, great, I've got nothing to say.
You can wax poetic about
I tell you
it
what,
being
though.
interplanetary or something.
There's something you mentioned about 5-10 minutes ago where someone was asking, why do you call yourselves NASASpaceflight.com?
Oh.
This isn't NASA. Why do you call yourself NASASpaceflight.com? I had an email earlier today.
Oh, no.
Someone complaining that we covered SpaceX too much. I was thinking, what? We cover SpaceX too much. So that was the inquiry by email. I won't read the whole thing out. It was quite funny.
It's like
I will enjoy replying to it later.
the
It was
NSF
basically
mailbag.
someone. Yeah, it was just somebody who doesn't realize that he's probably spent all his time on the forum, on the SpaceX section of the forum, and thinks that's the entire forum. Because if you section it, there's a very good chance you will think all we do is cover SpaceX because all you see is SpaceX threads. But that's that part of the forum. You might think all we cover is SpaceX if you click on an article link, a direct link to the article, and the other articles recommendations in that article will be SpaceX articles. So you will think all we do is cover SpaceX. It's not like that at all. If you go onto the front page of the site, if you go onto the main menu of the forum, you'll see we cover all sorts of things. But the reason is we called NASASpaceflight. I'm going to go for about 10 minutes here, Daz, so you can take a break if you want.
Oh, no, go for it. I'm just hanging out.
Yeah, it's because it comes up now and again, and you sometimes wonder why people ask the question. But to answer the question, we started 15 years ago. SpaceX didn't exist 15 years ago. It was literally a year later that Elon first came out saying he'd been trying to buy a Russian rocket, decided he couldn't do it. He was going to start his own rocket company up with the aim of increasing NASA's budget. There was none of this Mars landing business or anything like that. It was literally his way of trying to invest interest into the commercial sector. And he asked me if we would interview him. I've still got an email. He asked us if we wanted to interview him. And we did. We did 4 articles. And I'll put some links up to where they were.
No kidding.
It's just, it's all goes back to when we were covering shuttle. And shuttle, you couldn't have shuttlespaceflight.com. That'd be stupid. You'd be penciling yourself into just shuttle launches. And we covered things like Mars missions and things like that. Everything to do with NASA. But that was our bread and butter. That was our main thing. And that's why we called the site that. If we change the site's name now, we'd lose 15 years of heritage behind what we've covered. And now you'd be rebranding. It'd be a nightmare. It really would be. We'd have to change the T-shirts for one.
We'd have to change the T-shirts.
Yeah, Mark would fall out with me. He'd be saying, "I'm not redesigning all these things because you're taking NASA out your URL." But it's all to do with that. The fact that we've expanded our coverage and the fact that we cover SpaceX so much is because SpaceX is doing so much. We cover what's in the news. And unfortunately, the last Boeing Starliner press release was a month ago. So there's not a lot you can do if there's no news on it. And then, of course, with SpaceX, they're launching left, right, and centre. They've got these test vehicles in Boca Chica. Of course, we're going to cover it. And that's why we cover them most, because they're doing the most things. Thank you. Good night.
And we did have a relevant super chat. Chad was wondering, is it really that hard to change the name? Because they were pointing out that they have friends who get confused by the NASA and the name, which I understand that, and we do get that a lot, that people find it confusing. That I can definitely see, but it is, like Chris said, we've already sold a ton of shirts with the name. We're known by the name. We have all our, legal filings are under NASASpaceflight LLC. So, no, it's not easy to change.
When someone says there's NASA in the name, it's like saying, does that mean you're the NASA site? No, it's just like BonJoviFans.com is not Bon Jovi's official site. It's just got a name in it. NASA Watch is not NASA's official site. It's just got the name in it. That's all it is. So, yeah, I always get a bit confused by that. I can understand it, but I'm not a big fan of people saying, are you really NASA's official? Because that means they don't know NASA.gov for a start, so that means they're new to it all. So, yeah, that's, anyway, yeah. I'm trying to withhold myself from talking for 10 minutes about this.
In other news, the frost has gone away.
Yeah, it has gone away.
CH4 tank seemingly
Walmart doesn't sell walls.
I don't know if that was what was supposed to happen or not. Perhaps they were just working on a liquid oxygen tank today. I'm not sure, but it's also possible they will do another round of testing. So we're not sure what's happening here until the roadblock either lets teams back to the pad or reopens entirely. We'll keep watching to see what happens, because the roadblock is the indicator of when testing is done. When the test is done for today, they will remove the roadblock, and then that's the sign that it is safe for us to spool down the stream. But until then, as of now, it is a bit unclear as to if they're done with the proof test or if there's going to be a second round.
I wonder if they are done, because it was quite frosty when they're doing the RCS testing. And if they want to do some RCS testing, you think it'd be in the middle of the program, the test program itself. So maybe they are done. I think
There's
we're
another
so
event.
used to these getting so frosty, aren't we?
Yeah,
But,
That's
like
what probably
freezing
catches out
completely
there.
over.
Yeah.
but during these non-test to failure proof tests, they usually are pretty quick, and we don't see a ton of frost. But the fact that there wasn't anything on the methane tank, from what I could tell, is different than what we've seen before.
Do we think they would just proof the oxygen tank, like they only
I mean, it's
cryo-proof the
possible.
oxygen? Huh.
Maybe there was some reason that they thought that take, because like we mentioned earlier, we do think they are going to move away from this proof testing. And in fact, I mean, they already are moving away from proof testing. In the past, they would have had a thrust simulator with hydraulic pistons that press against the thrust puck of Starship and simulate the force of the Raptor engines during the test. For this test, they already had the Raptors installed, so they could not do that. So in other words, this was already less of a proof test than they've done before. So they are slowly moving away from the proof testing. So perhaps that's another step, is that they're no longer doing the methane tank. I'm not sure, but it is something to keep an eye on. But in the meantime, I have updated our status. The status is unclear because
I like
the
it.
status is unclear.
So again, y'all, we'll keep hanging out as long as we continue to see some activity. It definitely has spooled down quite a bit here, like Michael was saying. No real frost visible on the vehicle. It sort of was getting a little frosty, then we saw that testing, then we saw some venting, and then it's gone away. That we don't know if they're going to try it again. Are they going to do something else? Are they done for the day? I mean, they have an hour and 5 minutes left in the test window right now, going all the way up until 5 o'clock. But like we said earlier, SpaceX does not publish information. They don't publish the schedule for these sorts of tests. They certainly make people aware of the road closures for safety purposes, but they don't say, you know, oh, at 4 o'clock we're going to do this, and at 3 o'clock we're going to do this. It's very much based on the data they get. They're watching all the sensors, they're watching all the dials and buttons and blinking lights, and that's the purpose of testing these things. So we can't tell you, are they done for the day, are they not done for the day? We will just continue to hang out and chat about Starship. How's that sound?
What interests me about the test sequence is, as Michael said, they have reduced what they do compared to what SN8 went through before her first flight. And you would perceive they've got to do this, because if Elon's going to realize this goal of launching left, right, and center to the point they'll have 2 Starships on the pads at the same time, then you're going to want to reduce the amount of testing you do between flights. Will they only need a static fire test at some point? Will he even do away with that at some point, especially if it's flight proven, like we've seen with some of the Falcon 9s recently? So I think it's all aging towards that, where they can literally roll them out and get ready for launch. And that is what Elon wants. We know that. We know the amount of Starships they've got there, the amount of testing they want to do, the amount of objectives they want to complete. And then, of course, you've got Super Heavy, which is coming along. So it's a lot of activity to come. And you don't want to be holding back test objectives for the sake of, like, do we cryoproof this one again, just in case, you know, especially if it's flown. I think the key there is when they refly a Starship, because that is another goal which we've not really talked about much. We've been talking about the altitude we're looking for and looking for a smooth landing. We saw it with SN5 and SN6, but they never did refly, and they were planning to do that. They're planning to use them as a tag team to do the 150-meter hops, but the fact that they both did quite well, in fact, SN6 did even better than SN5, Elon then went, let's move on to the higher altitude tests, and that's where SN8's flight came in. So I think we're all looking at efficiencies of processing and pad flows, and they have a lot of Starships down the road, down Highway 4 at the production site. So you can imagine the way they want to do this. They have the vehicles ready to go, literally, or they will have the vehicles ready to go within the schedule they may perceive to have. And that really gets interesting for next year, because I think we might be seeing a launch a week at one point. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, they're getting to the point where the test cadence is actually backing up the production site. I mean, they have so many Starship parts back at the production site. They need to start destroying these things. They need to start launching them. They need to start flying them. Whatever it is they're going to do with each one. Of course, we all want them all to land and live forever in a happy little garden somewhere, right? But they have so many starships backing up. They're running out of room to actually store them or store their pieces. A lot of the times back over at the production site. So it's an interesting situation where the production of test articles is almost outpacing the ability to test those test articles because of the infrastructure. That's why we see two different pads. This is on pad B right now. You can see pad A right in the middle bottom of the screen is empty. It does not have a starship. Sooner rather than later, we're going to see two starships out there at the same time. I don't doubt that at all. But it really is starting to back them up. They need to get these tests going.
I've a mental image in my head I will not get rid of for a long time now, which is a bunch of starships all retirement doing gardening in the garden, like pruning the flowers, saying, "Do you remember when I flew to 12.5 kilometers? It was great."
Got a little apron on with a little straw hat. Yeah.
It's like the end seal of a movie called The Mule. If you've ever seen it, it's an end scene where they're all just gardening in a prison.
Yeah. I know which one you're talking about with Clint Eastwood, right?
Eastwood, that's right, yeah. But I'm trying to think back. Do we remember what SN number they were looking to do a next phase of evolution with the design of Starship? I know they're going to stay with the same outer mode line and the same shape. It'll still look the same. But there's some design improvements coming online. I'm not talking about the new alloy. I'm talking about, I think, SN15 or something like that. Michael, can you remember?
Well,
anyway, it's along those lines. About yes, people say 15 in chat.
15, yeah. Mary
now
said
they
15.
are producing SN15. That's the trick. They are actually producing that right now. So you think that maybe some mentality will be to let's push this test program with SN9 event, SN9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and not worry about it too much. Let's try and perfect the landing by then, and then push even higher with 15. So that might be there. We don't mind pushing the schedule here, because if we lose a couple, it's no big deal. We're about getting the data, the flight experience, and the landing perfected before SN15, and that's when we'll really properly, move this test program on. So I think maybe that's a good sign of the cadence we can expect next year, knowing that they're not too. But I mean, they don't want to see everything fail. They want to get things right. But they're not going to be too dramatically upset by the fact they might lose a few vehicles before SN15, because SN15 is their target of getting to the stage of maybe go orbital, maybe. I don't know, pushing it a bit there, but it's certainly a lot higher than 12.5 kilometers, put it that way.
Yeah.
It looks like they might be depressing.
There are two high-pressure vents going right now, huh? The methane tank on top.
For a while, yeah.
Smaller vent.
Mary says SN15, yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah. So,
That's
Chris,
a lucky guess on my part.
The other thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that building these things, like practicing building them, is also helping them learn things. It's not just about getting a Starship out to the launch pad and then, we didn't get any good information until it flies or whatever. Like, that is not true at all. Just having the workers back at the production site, I'm going to use the term practice, like literally practice the procedures for putting these things together. How do you get this welded? How do you transport this piece over here? How do you stack these things? Oops, we messed up. We folded some stainless steel in half. Get this out of the way. We got stuff to do. We saw that on the video just the other day where, wasn't that a booster ring, I think, that folded over or something? Yeah. Just the processes that they're working on back at the production site it's also good data. It's good experience for the people back there putting these things together. So it's like, you're learning to weld, or you're learning to crochet, or you're learning to whatever it is you're doing. Calligraphy, I don't care. You start off and you practice. You don't just, okay, we're going to do this 3 times, and then the third time is going to be perfect. You have to do it over and over and over again. Your first weld looks terrible. It doesn't stick together. It's whatever. And the next weld looks a little better, and a little better, and a little better. And we've seen that happening. We've seen the Starships get smoother. We've seen them, the fins get smoother, like all the different things, the quality improvements, I guess. The nose cones are smoother. Even just on the screen right now, look at the difference between Star Hopper, the little silver tank on the left-hand side, and then SN9, right? That's a year's worth of difference, a little bit more than a year's worth of difference, if I'm not mistaken, between the two there. And that's learning to go from point A to point B is part of what they have to do if they're going to get serious about building these things. I mean, welding it in a field with sand blowing all over the place, it's like, that's never going to work. No kidding. And then welding it in a high bay, welding it in a mid bay, welding it in the onion tents or whatever. All of those things, we're not just building these things to put on a show and fly one. They're building them to actually build them and mass produce them and get them going to orbit, you know?
It's quite funny because we do talk about, we rightly point out they've improved the production techniques, not least because I still remember when they were welding rings outside.
Yep.
And everyone says, welding outside's bad idea because you get dust, you get wind, and that's not good for welding. And then now they're inside, and they've got robotic welders, but we forget they're still inside what are technically just tents. There's like Deca ULA's factory is some massive high-tech billion-dollar factory with a clean room mentality. So they're not there yet, but they've improved so much that they can fly these things. So that they've kind of found a happy medium between some super expensive facility where they can maybe churn out one rocket, which is perfectly welded, it's absolutely clean, it's clean as anything. And then compared to what Boca Chica is, where they've got open door tents and they're welding inside with robotic welders, and that's an improvement. So,
yep. It is. I think
it's
going to continue to improve. It's going to continue to improve. You'll keep seeing them. But I guess that's sort of one of the mentalities here. You don't have to build the big billion-dollar facility out of the gate, and the first rocket that comes out is all welded by robots and perfect. You know what I mean? That's a completely different mentality. That's not what SpaceX does here. They're sort of building the production facility at the same time that they're figuring out how to build the rockets. And contrast that with Blue Origin, right? I will continue to tell you that Blue Origin's factory at the Cape is like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, and one day Bezos is going to roll up the doors and just rockets are going to start coming out of there. But you don't see anything. In the meantime, it's a big, massive factory with all this really cool drone footage and gimbal camera footage of walking around the inside. But what's going on? I don't know. I want to see some rockets,
Blue Origin are a bit of an enigma for me because they've got all this facility built now. I mean, the launch facility at Cape Canaveral is incredible. It really is already, and they've not finished it yet.
Yeah.
The factory production site they've got there is incredible. They've got an engine testing facility. I forget where about because Blue's not in the news all that much, which is incredible.
It's
got
right
the
there
West
at
Texas
the
facility. Sorry?
It's like it's outside the gate of the visitors complex. That big test stand that they put together. There's a massive test stand that's right behind. I mean, there's so much stuff out there.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they've not yet proven themselves as far as rockets go. They've not produced a New Glenn yet. They're still making the Pathfinder. So that's how far they've got to go yet. They're going to have to really get skates on to be in a position to launch next year. I mean, the year after next year, even 2022, because they've got to fulfill BE4's requirements for Vulcan. They can't hold Vulcan up. BE4's main customer is ULA now.
Yeah.
So they can't start putting BE4 to one side for New Glenn until they've given ULA everything they need to fulfill their first launches. And then they've got to produce numerous BE4s for a New Glenn rocket that is not yet built. So they've got a long way to go yet. And it's just incredible that they've got all this facility ready. It's almost like they've gone too fast with the facilities and they've forgot about the rocket. So
it's a completely different methodology, a way of going about things. Building the facility at the same time as the rockets. I mean, it's SpaceX. Oh, there goes another. They keep venting that thing.
Is there frost? I'm probably crazy. I was staying on the left side of the bottom methane tank, or the bottom portion of the methane tank.
I see what you're talking. Let me do the old A/B test.
There is. That's. I think that's frost. On the left lower portion of the methane tank.
Yeah, so about the middle of the rocket, y'all. You see where those lines that sort of go up the side is sort of like a racetrack of lines, and they go up about halfway, a little bit more than halfway of the rocket. We're looking just about the middle of the rocket to the left-hand side of that raceway. I don't actually know if that's a raceway. It's just some pipes that go up the side, but I'm going to call it a raceway. And there's a little bit of a lighter color there. Michael, that's what you're looking at, right?
Yeah, I think if I had to guess, they might be about to make another cycle out of proof tests. The first one might have gone perfectly to plan. That might have just been one of the test objectives that we're completing. And now perhaps we will be seeing a proof test involving the methane tank.
And you can see that there's a little color difference as well. I'm wondering if we're starting to get that condensation on the outside, like the frosty beverage condensation, right?
Yep, I agree.
So like we said, we can't tell you if they're done or not. The window goes on for another 52 minutes here, and we will see if we may get another set of proof tests. Maybe this next test, it'll get a lot frostier, like the sort of frost levels that we're used to.
Yeah.
Good times.
And again, the window closes at 5, so presumably this is the final round of testing they will do today, although this is a very soft window, so if they had to go over by a few minutes or even a few hours, I don't think that would be a huge problem.
Yeah. Are there road closures tomorrow, Michael?
Yeah, same time, 8 to 5 p.m. But then after that, the next closures are Monday through Wednesday the following week. I think they might want to try avoid having any sort of closures that would affect access to the beach over the upcoming New Year's holiday.
Sounds like the forklift is spooled down. For a while, we got a really nice backup beeper, and I haven't heard that thing going off for a while now. So it's still venting, though. Look at that.
It's still at a pretty good rate, so...
Do we have any questions to fire through?
Yes, we do. We can. Good idea. We also have some super chats. Jim, thank you for the $10. Thanks to everything you guys do. Rusty Kane with Happy New Year's from New Zealand. No Zeus today. I don't think we've seen Zeus, no. Blake Parsons with $8 Australian. Thank you so much, Blake, for being such a big supporter.
Hey, Blake, how's it going?
Mad Biker, thank you for the £5. 2021 looks promising. If you had to throw a wild prediction, what would it be for the biggest thing for 2021? That is a tough question. What do you think, Chris?
Perseverance landing.
Oh, yeah.
I honestly, yeah, it sounds low, but everyone thinks, ooh, rocket launch, probably. Honestly, that is so amazing the way those rovers land. That the fact that they've done it once already at the first attempt with the sky crane technique, to do it again, you know, honestly, outside of how much I love things like Falcon Heavy's launch, you know, and things like that, that last 10 minutes of Curiosity's landing was just something else. It really was. It was pure drama, and so many things could have gone wrong, and there was no way out of it. It was all automated. They were getting information on like an 8-minute delay or something. So
yep.
Everything was just crazy about that night. And I honestly think if they can repeat it and do the presentation of the control room again, like did first time round, rather than too many talking heads and people on desks going, NASA's social media accounts are this, that, and the other. Just show the control room and show the controllers, because that's where the real drama was. You know, the emotion on their faces was everything to what they were going through and what we were all following along with. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Perseverance, just on the fact that it's just so different.
So you don't think that James Webb is launching in 2021?
No. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm sorry. I might get hate mail for this, but that has been such a convoluted design process and a money pit that I honestly aren't a massive fan of it, just from the amount of delays it's caused. And it seems to get like no grief at all for being delayed years and years and years. SLS delayed 6 months, and everyone's like, cancel it. You know,
well, I think the thing is, SLS is competition. James Webb, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of money, but at least it's something that's.
I think it's interesting.
Any other way.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, but I'm not really fully invested into it as telescopes go. I just never have been, so that's just me. So that's why Perseverance wins.
Is Perseverance, 3 months? Is it March, April? When is Perseverance landing?
February 18th, I think.
February 18th.
Did I get that right?
Like 6 weeks.
Like that.
I'd have to Google it.
Yep, I'm correct. I don't know how I remember that, but February 18th at 3:43 p.m. Eastern Time.
No kidding. So that's 6 weeks away at this point.
I'm not sure if that time I just read is the actual landing time or the time that the NASA controllers get the data back on the delay.
Oh, I'll tell you why I've got a problem with telescopes. But during the final shuttle missions, a lot of the astronomy folks were like lobbying the Senate and Congress about the amount of money being spent on shuttles and the missions, after Columbia, saying you better spend on, robotic missions and more telescopes launched on ELVs and stuff like that. And as soon as Hubble started having problems and they needed STS-125, y'all went, oh, we need to start funding shuttle more so we can have this STS-125 mission. That stuck with me a little bit. Telescope people.
I mean, I like the Perseverance thing because people are like, oh yeah, we're going to Mars. Oh yeah, and it's like, where have y'all been? We're there. We've populated
Yeah.
with robots. We just have to get caught up to. I mean, I know the difference between we're going to Mars, like people are going to Mars, and getting a crewed mission. I get it. All right, it's just a funny joke.
This has got a Mars
But-
helicopter and everything. It's
Yeah.
more. It's just so much more. And
It's
it'd be
like,
involved
what?
with the Mars Science Sample Return mission. There's a lot more with this rover than there was with the previous. I think it's just fascinating the amount of things it can do.
But one thing, Chris, are you not a fan of Insight? Because you've been talking about Mars landings, and you have not. I've noticed you've not mentioned the word or the name Insight.
No, because you asked about 2021, didn't you, Michael?
then you brought up a landing from 2012.
Oh, no, well, there you go. But
Yeah,
it's all great. Look, they're all fascinating. They're all interesting. But there's different levels involved. It's like saying, you're excited about this, that, and the other. They've all got their own charms. But
Yeah, I think Insight's super cool, but it's not
It's-
quite
yeah.
as high profile as a rover.
there you go.
Insight's the one that deployed the hamburger, right?
The hamburger.
Yeah, the seismic sensor or whatever
Yes.
that has a dome over the top of it to
Oh,
shield
right,
it from the wind. It looked like a hamburger, and I don't know. That's what I remember about Insight is that it looks like it deployed a hamburger.
It also has the mole.
Ah, yes,
yeah.
the infamous mole.
I don't think they've tweeted a recent update. I keep checking the pictures. It's still underground, which is a good sign, but I have not heard a recent update on if they've gotten it to go any further down. If you've been following that, the mole did not want to go down into the ground like it was supposed to. It was supposed to burrow several meters down into Mars to measure the temperature, but it had some issues. The soil was not quite as they expected it to be, so they've been trying to use the robotic arm to assist the mole downwards, and we're still waiting on an update as to if they've made any progress.
And that was the thing. It looked like something pushed it out. It was supposed to burrow down, and it had this little design. It was supposed to go down to the soil and then dig, like you said, a couple meters down. And then one day we got these images of it, and it literally looked like something just pushed it out of the ground.
Yeah,
We're like, wait,
it backed
what?
out twice. The first time it just stopped moving, and I thought they weren't sure if it had hit a rock or whatnot.
Hit a
so
rock or something, yeah.
They pulled the case back off of the robotic arm, and it was just sitting there on the soil. And then they tried to push it down with the robotic arm, and they got it to go much deeper. So then they decided to see if it could burrow on its own again, and it pretty quickly backed almost all the way back out. So now they've been making another attempt where they've been applying as much force, as much friction as possible to the surrounding soil, or they've been applying as much pressure as possible to the surrounding soil in order to build up the friction on the mole, hopefully get it to go down further.
I noticed there's quite a lot of James Webb Telescope fans in our chat since I mentioned that. Wayne Hussain says James Webb Telescope will shake the foundations of some religions. So I think he's a fan. But there's this little. The reason why I read that as a segue, it's technically replacing Hubble, isn't it? That's the whole idea of James Webb is to be the next generation of telescopes to take over from Hubble. Do we all think, in chat, tell me, do you all think it'd be quite a fascinating mission for Starship's cargo vehicle with the Chomper to try and recover Hubble and bring it back to a museum?
I had an illustration on a previous stream concerning Hubble and the way that Starship lands. I'm not sure I want to put Hubble through that.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, that's right. I remember that. But I bet they could find a way.
Would
The
you rather
capacity's there.
put Hubble through a deorbit with a fireball in the atmosphere, or an attempted return to Earth on Starship?
Like by shaking it around in the upper area while it tries that backflip thing it does, the belly flop.
Well, hang on. If we're concerned about Hubble, then why are we going to put people on this thing? That's what I'd say. It's going to have to be refined to the point where humans can get through the regime that Starship undertakes when it returns, to the point that it's going to be a bit better than shaking a little telescope around a little bit inside the payload bay. I'm sure they can secure it. There must be ways of doing it.
Are you sure you want to ask me that question about people riding Starship, Chris?
Yeah. Daz, what's your thoughts about people riding on Starship?
Ain't no way I'm getting on that Starship, is what I have to say about that.
I'd volunteer. I'd be first on. I'd be first in line.
Chad
really?
saying,
2 meters in front of the next person.
For the flip, like for the belly flop.
Oh, you what? I'd do it.
I think chat has a good solution. Just service.
Bubble wrap?
No, yeah, servicing's difficult. It really is. If you look at STS-125's payload bay, it was full of equipment, literally chock full of equipment, to the point you'd have to put all that into the nose cone of Starship, which you could do, but then you need astronauts to go and do that. You can't robotically repair Hubble. It just can't be done. They've tried to look at it. They said they have to do it by people. That's why STS-125 happened, and why STS-125, with all its risk, required Endeavour to be on pad 39B, ready to launch within a day if STS-125 had difficulties to go and rescue the Q. It's ridiculous the amount of requirements that are needed for a Hubble servicing mission. You can't do it robotically unless someone comes up with some new fancy robots who can run around like Wally, and basically do all these repairs on Hubble that the astronauts used to do. But I'm sorry, I think it really will be a crude requirement, and then that's why servicing is out now, because the shuttle's retired.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could do something along the lines of what Northrop Grumman has done with the MEV vehicles, where it's just a different vehicle that attaches to a spacecraft and provides it with its own propulsion systems and stuff. But
I think
Hang on.
it's probably
comes
too
down-
big.
Pink Mouse has sorted it. Pink Mouse has just saved Hubble.
Wait, what?
Launch people on Crew Dragon, kit on Starship. That could be doable. Someone
At some
tell me
point,
I'm
though,
being
it's just-
stupid.
More expensive and complicated than building a new one.
There's no airlock on Dragon. You wouldn't be doing EVAs from Dragon.
Damn
you
it.
know?
Pink
You have
Mouse,
to-
you nearly saved Hubble there. Unlucky.
So close.
Put the airlock on Starship.
Plus
you know,
7 Hubble.
dock Crew Dragon to Starship.
There you go. So actually, the payload area of Starship is a pressurizable area, and it chomps Hubble, and then it pressurizes so that the astronauts can go inside. They dock to the side of Starship, and they can work on it in a nice pressurized T-shirt and sleeves environment, right? And then they fix Hubble, and they get back in the Dragon, then it depressurizes. All right. Anyways, it's very
Mouse
Kerbal
says, "I'll
Space
keep
Program. I like it.
thinking."
I'll keep thinking. Nice.
We want a
Anyways, this,
spreadsheet. We need a spreadsheet, Pink Mouse, otherwise it doesn't really work, because we're a spreadsheet gang here now. Yeah.
I mean, I like that. I don't want anybody to think like, oh, so negative. It's not really. It's like thinking through problems and stuff like that. There will be cool things that we see, and I've seen a lot of cool things in my lifetime. There will be more cool things that happen in my lifetime, for sure. And it's cool to sort of think through some of the different ways that you could solve problems like that, like chomping Hubble or whatever.
But what about DOS?
It's fine. There's a lot of solutions where they do videos like KSP or even CGI, fancy CGI videos, where they're guessing a lot of things with Starship. They tweet it, Elon sees it and says, that looks accurate. That must be the most satisfying thing ever, to put some work into to evaluating what you think Starship might be doing. And then for Elon, who knows what Starship will be doing, to say that's accurate. So I love it when it happens.
Yeah.
NASA will never tell you this, but I was watching one of DOS's Twitch streams a couple of months ago. He had a guest from the James Webb Space Telescope team on about the sun shield, and they said that they had made design decisions with. Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they said they had made design decisions related to the sun shield to make it at least sort of possible to service it, even though NASA will never tell you that they have any plans to ever service James Webb.
That's actually correct. They were talking about, could you service it? Could you fix it? And it was not a mission requirement to specifically design things that way, but there's some little things that you can do when you're in. This isn't an exact example, right? We didn't have any exact examples, but it's little things like, oh, we route this wire. Does it go this way? Does it go that way? Oh, this panel is blocked by this other thing. I don't know if you've ever taken a part of motor in a car or something like that, but it's like, to change the oil filter, you got to take apart 8 different things. Like, I got to take the entire suspension off in order to change the oil filter. Who designed this thing, right? Versus, well, we designed this oil filter to be changed. There's some design decisions that you can make that may help with servicing, even though you're not specifically making them to enable servicing. Does that make sense when I explain it that way?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
but
mean,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, to be fair, I mean, there's obviously absolutely no plans to service James Webb, but
Right.
if James Webb lasts as long or even close to as long past its lifespan as Hubble did, who knows where our technology will be in the 2030s or whatever. So you just never know how long something's going to last until you actually have it operating in space. You know, Hubble has far, in a way, exceeded the original plans they had with it. So you just never know what the technology will be like and if a servicing mission could be possible. So there's no reason not to leave that completely out of the question if it's not a huge design problem or challenge.
Okay, this has turned into a telescope chat, but I've got something
There's
from
a
Alex
car.
Fieldman
Look at
here.
that. Sorry, there's a car.
Also, there's cars coming.
Going the opposite direction, which means for sometimes the cryogenic proof tests they have, because the safety radius is not quite as large because it's inert nitrogen, sometimes they'll have a checkpoint by the beach, and that might have been where that car was coming from.
Yeah,
That means that the pad is now safe, so we're safe.
Yeah, I bet you the road is open as well. That was probably a sheriff vehicle or something coming back. But if that car is leaving, I bet you the roadblock. So we'll see if Mary can check on the roadblock or something for us and just let us know. But,
it's a bit rude of that car to interrupt our telescope chat.
Our telescope discussion. Jeez, It was a Starship-related telescope discussion. Come on.
But I find this fascinating now. So Alex Fieldman, he asks, use Starship to chomp Hubble and bring it to the ISS for servicing from the station and take Hubble back to its orbit. Now, the orbits are very different. Is there enough Delta V on Starship to do that?
It depends. If you're not taking any payload up, really, or you're just taking the servicing tools and whatever you need to service it, and you're not carrying an empty Hubble or whatever, you should have a lot of extra Delta V left over when you deliver Starship to orbit, right? And that gives you the capability to do a lot of stuff once you're up there if you're going up empty or mostly empty, partially empty. And there's Mary reporting in that the road looks open and we see a vehicle returning to the pad there as well. So you get into orbital inclinations and stuff like that. I don't know that you're going to match the orbital inclination of Hubble with the ISS to bring it back over. I don't think we're ever going to see a Starship dock with the ISS or even really come close to it. I don't think that you'd approach the ISS if you weren't intending to dock with it. It's just the mass of Starship versus the mass of the ISS and the thruster controllability of both of them. I don't know that that's going to be anything that we'll ever see, even as cool as it would be. But there's a lot of cool ideas that get enabled whenever you can take 100 tons of whatever to orbit. Maybe you take 50 tons in extra fuel or whatever it is you do, right? So there's a lot of cool concepts that you can start to think through once you have that kit, that tool in your toolkit, you know? And we're checking in with Mary here, y'all. We think that if the road is official, we're making sure that the road is officially open, but there's still some venting happening on the vehicle. You can see there, that would be coming from the top of the oxygen, the LOX tank, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But it may be that we're at the end of what we would expect to see here today.
Yeah, again, the task window closes at 5 p.m., and they are returning to the pad, it looks like. So you just never know for sure with the proof test. So we'll make sure the road is certainly open. Yeah, it looks like the road is open.
Yeah. All right. And there's some people over on Fleet Cam freaking out right now because Nightbot, right, the little automated script that tries to block certain words and stuff like that, keeping it classy in chat so that people of all ages can enjoy Starship and Starship-related content or whatever it is we have around here. Nightbot actually watches all of our streams at once, and when there's a ton of chat happening in one stream, it fires the automated notifications in the other stream based on the chat volume of all the streams. So over in the Fleet Cam stream, Nightbot has been going crazy, constantly spamming these notifications. Join NASASpaceflight, join NASASpaceflight over and over again. And it's because there's so many people chatting in this stream. That's just the limitation of the way that Nightbot works. I thought that was funny. Somebody said, Nightbot's going crazy. And I was like, wait, what? Oh, it's just posting the same stuff over and over.
To train Nightbot a little bit better.
Yeah. It's just this what it is. But
Anyway.
Michael, Chris, it does sound like we're wrapping it up here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yep, indeedy.
As usual, no way for us to know if that was a successful test or not until we either see the road closures tomorrow get canceled or Elon tweet something. But
Elon.
it did, from what we could tell, there was like no obvious signs of a major problem. Just not a ton of frost on the methane tank was the one interesting thing we noted, but that could have easily been what they planned to do. So the RCS testing was awesome. Chris B has a tweet on Twitter. If you missed that, you can go check out. But otherwise, I'm sure Mary has some footage of that we will put in our daily update video. So until the next
There's the
stream.
tweet.
Yep, there. Chris B has got the tweet in chat.
There
But
you go.
assuming this test went well, our next stream should be a triple engine static fire test with Starship SN9. So look out for that stream, and that will be super exciting.
Shall we? Did we get mostly caught up with? Wow. I'm going to run the super chats really quickly here, y'all. We're shutting it down. But Mark Osterlin, thanks for the $5. Hope you guys had some nice holidays. Thanks for the streams. And hi, Thomas. So we missed that so far. Thomas is long gone, but we'll pass on the message. Marcelo, thank you for the new membership. Thanks for supporting what we do here. Glad you were enjoying it. Also, Gustavo Arango B, thank you so much. The new membership there as well. B Engineer with $5. There's a question there. I'm just going to see if I can hit the question really quickly. I didn't want to miss these super chats. Do you expect SpaceX to continue launching Starships toward the end of the allocated testing window? Like they wait till the end of the window? I don't know that they're going to do it intentionally towards the end of the window. I think they're just taking all the time they have available. If they knew for sure that they were going to go for the end of the event window, I don't know that they would take as large of a window. I think they are using all that available time, and the more they launch, the better they'll probably get at it. So they'll probably start going all times of the window, maybe the beginning of the window sometimes. But thanks for the $5 from Australia there. And then last but not least, Joey Rogers, thank you so much for the $4.99. This is 30 minutes ago, actually, so apologize for that. Would it be possible that SpaceX will try to reuse SN9 when it has a successful landing? That's up to SpaceX. I mean, if they want to try 2 hops with a single vehicle, I think it's going to depend on how the vehicle was performed in its hop. Did it land? Did it stick the landing or not? So I think that's up to SpaceX to decide. I can't answer that one for you. But thank you so much for the support. And y'all, there's always questions left in the queue. We get to the end of every single stream, every single thing we do, and we always run out of time where we can't answer all the different questions. So if you ask the question and we didn't get to it, thank you so much for participating and letting us know what your question was. You can always reach out to us on Twitter. Tag us at NASASpaceflight. I'm just going to tell you to tweet at Chris B himself. And if he doesn't know the answer,
mail.
Yeah, he'll tag the correct person who can answer the question for you. How's that sound, Chris?
Yeah, that's better.
Or just read the articles. I mean, if you go through the NASA Spaceflight website and you read all the articles there, you'll probably know everything you need to know about spaceflight. You won't have any questions left. So maybe that's the right thing to do.
That'd be nice.
Anyways, y'all, this is the NASA Spaceflight team. Let's go through the cast and crew here really quickly. The voice you just heard was Chris Bergen, the founder of NASA Spaceflight. Chris, thanks for hopping in for the stream here today, watching Starship.
Always an absolute pleasure, Daz.
Oh, good deal. Y'all, at NASA Spaceflight, he's like actually NASA Spaceflight on Twitter. Toss a follow over there. If we're doing live streams, we're going live. You don't trust the YouTube notifications or whatever. If you follow on Twitter, Chris will get a tweet out anytime there's something that we want to share with y'all. So that is a fantastic Twitter follow. And turn on the notifications on Twitter. When Chris tweets, it's usually something you want to see, or a horse, but whatever. Not that people don't want to see horses, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
so
amazing animals. So let's be fair.
They really are. And then also here on with us still is. Do we still have Michael? We do have Michael on,
Yes,
right?
we do.
All right.
I'm still here.
Michael Baylor, thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in, everyone. And I'm not sure if they'll be able to do a static fire tomorrow. And I don't think Mary got a notice for tomorrow, so the static fire might not be tomorrow. But if not, it would be early next week, probably Monday of next week, which is the 4th, I believe. So the 4th of January is probably the earliest date for a static fire.
Good deal. Remember what I was saying about following on Twitter? That's another good Twitter follow for you. At Next Spaceflight is Michael's Twitter. In between, if you follow NASA Spaceflight and Next Spaceflight, apart from being confused because they're the same number of characters, they start with an N and have Spaceflight at the end. If you follow those two accounts, you will definitely stay well informed about things like road closures or live streams or whatever. Michael also has a really cool app. He's not going to say it himself, but he's got a cool Next Spaceflight app that will alert you on your phone, your mobile device, when there's a launch or some other noteworthy space event coming up. So, Michael, thank you so much for everything you do to make these things happen. Earlier today, we also heard from Jack. He snuck through for a little bit. Thomas was here as well. But make sure you don't forget, y'all, Mary, Boca Chica gal. She has been out there watching, waiting for things to go on. In fact, yesterday, Mary was waiting for the cryo test to happen. And because we haven't figured out the technology to clone Mary yet, she wasn't able to get some stuff that was happening over at the production site. Remember, there's an opportunity cost for her to go and set up the live stream in one location because there's stuff happening in multiple locations around Boca Chica. So make sure you give some thanks to Mary. She is out there every single day bringing you the daily videos, the most dedicated Starship chronicler that you will find anywhere on the internet. Toss her a follow over on Twitter at Boca Chica gal if you want to stay up to date with what's going on with Starship. But without Mary, we would have never gotten started with these awesome streams from Boca Chica, and we'd be here waiting every 3 weeks for a rocket launch or something along those lines.
Yeah, true.
You know, I mean, it's
Yeah,
a true
very
statement.
true.
But Mary, Boca Chica gal, thank you so much for everything you do out there at Boca Chica, sharing this with people all over the world. This is what I like to see. Lynn says you're a complete gem. Thanks, Mary, says Zach. Thank Mr. Showtime, all the different people. Horse space flight was taken. What does that have to do? Horse space flight.
Someone was
Sorry.
suggesting a new name for the site, and I thought that was the best one to come up with.
Oh, jeez. But y'all, for real, that's I love to see everybody saying thanks to Mary in chat over there, because she really is what got us started with these cool live streams where we share Boca Chica with people all over the world. And lastly, over here on this end, I'm John Galloway for NASA Spaceflight. I talk a lot and do a bunch of the robots and camera stuff and that sort of thing, but I'm going to go ahead and do the sign-off here for you today. Follow along. If you follow me on Twitter, K Space Academy, you're probably just going to get a bunch of fleet cam related stuff. I love doing me some fleet cam time lapses. But for now, that is the end of the testing today. The road is open. We saw some really cool thruster firings. The first time we had seen those reaction control thrusters firing for an extended period of time, no less, and maybe a little bit more powerful than what we've seen in the past. So sitting here watching the tanks down there in Texas today was worthwhile just to get to see those. But as always, we appreciate the support. We appreciate y'all showing up when we go live. We hope you understand when we go live, it's something that you probably want to see if you're a fan of Spaceflight or Starship. But I don't think I need to say anything else for now. We'll just go ahead and shut down the stream now, saying thank you one more time, and later, nerds. We'll see you next time. Stay tuned for the next stream.
Chamber pressure looks good. Following up.